All right, so Cole, buddy, my friend, Firewood TV. You want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, hi, I'm Cole McCormick, filmmaker. I do YouTube as well. I go by Firewood Media on YouTube. Firewood Media TV, Firewood TV, it's all kind of the same thing at this point. But yeah, I started out doing movies just on YouTube. I used it more as a platform to show off the stuff that I make, class projects, all the type of stuff, and then it gradually turned into me talking about movies. And then in January of this year, I made a video that got semi-popular on YouTube about Godzilla, and then that's sort of why I'm here now, I suppose. Now I just run a Godzilla-centric YouTube channel. It just kind of ended up that way, so...
Yeah, no, I discovered you through that video because it was an interesting video that came beforehand with, I forget his name, but the man that made the video made one of the most horrible Godzilla videos I've ever witnessed on the channel. It wasn't like he had, like, bad takes as in terms of, like, oh, I like this movie as in comparison to this movie. It was, he completely didn't understand the fundamentals of Godzilla in any way.
Yeah, it was blatant misinformation. I mean, that's a term that I am not a huge fan of because it can be subjective, but it's literally like it was just wrong information. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to just make a video talking about it. It's not going to get any attention. It's probably going to get, at best, 1,000 views, because for me, that's, like, wow, that's a banger video, So that was, like, the highest expectation that I had, and then it got a lot of eyes on it. And so for me, that was just sort of what happened. But yeah, you're right, it's a terrible, terrible video. And my only regret is not going more into it, more in depth. I kind of just did like a Spark Notes version of it. There's another video out there that did that, and I think they did a better job than I ever could. So in a way, it kind of worked out.
I liked your video, though. I think that the way you broke it down, the way that you took it bit by bit by bit, and it's like, okay, this is what this guy said, but then this is the reality of what is actually the thing. It's not that, like, you just said, like, okay, yeah, he likes 2014 or he likes -1 compared to this movie, whatever. You took, like, this is what Godzilla means, this is what it meant when it was created, and this is what it means now in comparison. So I like the way that you just broke it down. Like, it was very nice.
Thank you.
But with that being said, I've asked you here today.
Yes.
This is the start of Godzilla's era's discussion, I guess. I don't really know what to call it, but we're going to be going through every single era little by little, and I thought, what a perfect way to start it by talking about the MonsterVerse. A lot of people would think, let's do the Showa era first, since that's what came first, but the MonsterVerse really opens up a lot of great discussion opportunity. I think you and me are around the same age, so we were in that really weird time space between Final Wars and 2014 when there was nothing Godzilla related. So I think this is going to be a really cool opportunity for us, man.
Yeah, I agree. I made a video about that on my own channel, that sort of dead era, and how YouTube kept everything going, essentially, with how, all the fan creations, Cinemassacres, Monster Madness, all the classics, like those kept the franchise alive in a way. So, yeah, if you don't mind, I can kind of talk a little bit about 2014, because with that, it was like, that blew me away when I heard they were doing a Godzilla movie again, because it seemed like the franchise was dead,
Yeah, let's start. So, like, with the MonsterVerse in general, like, what are your thoughts? Like, just in general.
Yeah, I think that the MonsterVerse is a great gateway series to get people into Godzilla. It's a streamlined approach at the franchise that, give or take it now where it is with Godzilla X Kong, which we will get into, but I think that if you want, from an American perspective, if someone wants to get into Godzilla, I think that's the best way to start, is from the MonsterVerse, just because it is a very streamlined, very Americanized take on the monster that isn't disrespectful or, like the 98 version. It's still a very good characterization of Godzilla, while also being entertaining Hollywood blockbusters at the same time. They aren't, as I would say, I don't want to sound pretentious, but they're not as deep as, some of the other Japanese ones like Shin or -1, which came after 2014. Or I guess I'll say 54. Like, they aren't as heavy with their messaging, but Godzilla movies don't need to be that heavy with their messaging. It's so for an entry point, MonsterVerse completely succeeds at that. I think that it has a lot of highs, it has a lot of lows, but that's every Godzilla era. So yeah.
No, I agree. Like for me, it's a very mixed bag for me personally as a hardcore Godzilla fan, where you do have your high highs where you're like cheering out of your seat, like yeah, woo. But then there are the very low points where you're like, oh boy, like this is Godzilla's revenge or TriStar levels of like just like okay, we're going this way. But let's start with 2014, like you were saying. So Gareth Edwards movie.
Yeah. That was a movie that I was so excited for. I remember when I saw the IMDb page, I thought it was fake at first. It was like 2011 when I first saw that kind of posted up there. I'm like, all right, whatever. And then it was still there like a year later. And then I saw the poster actually being added where it was like that black with like the red lettering going down. And I'm like, oh, this is legit. And then the Comic-Con leak started happening, and there was like that fan experience, which I'm sure no one, you might remember it, but like...
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, where like Godzilla was walking by the office building, and you could like see a glimpse of him. And I just remember like going back and watching that and analyzing that as a kid, just like fascinated by it. And, you know, every day I'd come home from school and I would check that IMDb page and see if there were any new updates. I remember at one point, some fan went in there and did all these like fan casts where they had like Patrick Stewart that was cast. It was like a day. It was there for a day, and it was like Patrick Stewart was in it, and all. And I was so hyped, and then it was gone, and I'm like, what happened? So, yeah, it was constantly being hijacked, which I thought was hilarious because that was my only way of knowing what was going on with the project. And then, you know, as time went on, and there was a confirmed release date, I remember looking at the set photos too, and just I remember the first set photo that I saw was of the soldiers kind of standing by the water, and there was like the fire. That was in the scene of the movie where
I remember that.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, they're doing like a lava. Like I don't know why. I just thought it was like some like lava scene that was gonna go on. But I would scrutinize everything. When the first trailer came out, it blew my mind. I'm like,
that was like an all-day thing where like the entire day I just rewatched that teaser, and it didn't show anything even in the final product of the movie. I don't think there's like a single shot. Yeah. But you just like watched it over and over again, especially the bug monster. I was like, yes, they're gonna have Godzilla fight someone.
Yeah, I was so hyped. And then the other thing too is the teaser where they did the Halo jump, and with that, I'm like, oh, we're getting like something on the level of 54 Godzilla. Like that just made me even more hyped. But around that time in my life too, I would have been about 12 years old in 2014. So I was really getting into filmmaking and getting into learning what a director was. And so I did a whole deep dive on Gareth Edwards. I watched Monsters to like learn, okay, this is what he's done before, and learning sort of like, it also introduced me to the concept of directors doing their own VFX, because he did that in Monsters. And so for me it was this like, wow, this guy is a true like Swiss Army man of a director, and that made me want to kind of go in that direction as a filmmaker. But even then, you know, I got this issue of Famous Monsters of Filmland that was about 2014, and this was leading right up to the release of the film. And I read that thing until like, it's so beat to crap right now. It's so bad. It is like the pages are falling out, but there were interviews in there from Gareth Edwards where he talked in depth about his design philosophies with Godzilla. And one of the design philosophies that I loved was he wanted to create a monster that in 1954, if it came up on the shore, if one of the Toho employees saw it and they ran back to the studio and described Godzilla, they would have made the 54 monster. So they wanted to sort of make like that original Godzilla that would have inspired the actual original Godzilla. So, but just that, for me as a kid, that was like my most hyped release, I think, ever in my entire life. Like that was just like, and to me, it lived up to it. When I saw it as a kid, I loved it. I loved every second of it. I you know, we can get into it, but there were just so many crowd-pleasing moments. Like when he takes the Muto, rips the jaw open, and then does the atomic breath into it. It's like, it's so cool. It's so good. It was like a Mortal Kombat fatality.
You're giving me chills right now, just like your excitement about it, because I was the exact same way when I was that kid. Because for us, we were in that age of, there was nothing. Once Final Wars came out, there was nothing for a Godzilla fan for the longest time. There was no information. When Toho said Final Wars was it, they were legitimate about it. Like they were like, okay, we're stepping back. No rumors. There was like little bits and hints, like Godzilla versus Dartha was always
Deathla.
Deathla.
Yeah.
Deathla was one that always kind of went around, or like they would always think like, okay, would it be funny if like King Kong showed up again in a Godzilla movie?
Yeah.
Or Mechani Kong. What else was there? There was the rumored Godzilla 3D there for a while, where it was like a Godzilla versus Hedorah sequel.
Yep.
Little bits and pieces here and there, but I remember that I was exactly with you when all of a sudden Warner Brothers was like, no, we're actually going to take Godzilla. And there was that famous legendary like poster of like Godzilla charging up his breath. Like it was a teaser, I think. And that blew me away. I was like, finally, like, oh my gosh. Because at this point, you and me were around the same age. I was probably 12 or 13 as well. And it was the most excited I had been for a movie. I'm with you. When that Halo Jump teaser came out, I think me and my dad, because my dad is just as big of a Godzilla fan as I am. He instilled that in me with watching all the movies when I was a kid. And we watched that teaser over like the whole entire day. We were analyzing it. Like when, because in that teaser, there is the shot of Godzilla just kind of looming when he's falling instead of like fighting the Mutos. So it's like, oh my gosh, like what is Godzilla going to look like? Because we were still in that era of the TriStar era. Like everyone was worried, what is Godzilla going to look like? That was everyone's concern. And then is Godzilla going to fight a monster? That was, as hardcore Godzilla fans, those were our two big looming questions. Is he going to fight a monster, and what does he look like? And when they finally showed him off, that was like the most pleasing moment as a Godzilla fan, where you took a look at the design in the teasers, and even though you didn't see him fully, you could see things like his face or maybe his foot, and it was like, yes, they nailed him. He was a bit chunky, but they nailed him. Fat Godzilla or Fatzilla. Or, they had like a few nicknames for him in the fandom. I forget. But and then I'm with you because me and my dad, we saw it opening day, and it was everything that I wanted a Godzilla reboot to be. Where it was nowadays, I think going back to the movie, it can be a little slow, but watching it for that first time, the buildup of Godzilla was something I will never forget. And when you see that airport scene, when all of a sudden that foot comes in, you're like, boom. It's like, like you were ready, like,
The scale in that movie is incredible. That's something I always bring up to people. It's like, if you want a movie where you truly feel the scale of a monster, like you can understand how big they really are, then that movie is like, that's like, 101, like how to scale stuff. I mean, that specific moment you're talking about, you see so many things in the foreground where, you're almost not sure like why it's still panning. And then when his foot comes down and you see it, you realize just how huge he is, and that's just so impactful. One thing too with Gareth Edwards that I adore is he talked about with that movie wanting to always have the camera where a person could realistically be. So we're always seeing it from like rooftops, or maybe it's kind of like a helicopter shot, but otherwise like we're not getting these like spinning Michael Bay, Transformers type of shots where you're not sure what's happening. It's just everything was so meticulous with that movie. It's almost like Spielbergian, with how it builds up this stuff too. And, I just can't stop thinking about some of those moments, how they remind me of like the Brontosaurus scene in Jurassic Park when all the characters are, looking up at it and we don't see it yet. Like you were just waiting to see what they're looking at, and it's timed out so perfectly. When that movie came out too, a big complaint was Godzilla doesn't have enough screen time, but it's like, that's the point. Like they're building to it. Like this was years and years of anticipation. So to just kind of tease it for a little bit more, it was the perfect decision, I think, at least.
No, I agree. Like going back to it as a second or a third time watch, it is slow. I will agree with that. Going back to it and trying to rewatch it, especially because we'll get into like the characters and stuff like that, but it is true where that first like part, but then once Bryan Cranston dies, it kind of loses steam just a little bit in the human portion. And then you're just waiting for the Godzilla scenes, and then they're not really coming as fast as you would want them to happen on a second or a third time rewatch. But that first time you watched it, for us as Godzilla fans who had been waiting 15 years at this, or 10 years at this point, to see Godzilla back, and for some of us, this was the first time we were seeing Godzilla on the big screen. This was the first time for at least you and me, we were seeing Godzilla on the big screen. So it was when you hear that roar and it shows Godzilla and the Muto roars back and then Godzilla roars back. That was like the moment where like everything, like you could hear a pencil drop, or like your theater just erupted into applause, depending on where you were.
Yeah, I saw it opening. Well, I saw it. It was the night before, I suppose it technically came out. It was like the Thursday, kind of like midnight screening, and my dad took me on a school night, which was totally awesome. You know, yeah, it was a packed theater full of Godzilla fans. You know, so it was wonderful. It was such a cool experience. That was one of the best theater experiences, I think, at least. I can't even think of anything that actually kind of compares now that I think about it. So I think that or maybe like seeing Infinity War, like Endgame when that came out, you know.
-1 for me is like the coolest experience, because I went and saw that one at the IMAX like the 3 days before anyone else could see it.
Oh, sure.
And that one was awesome because there was old men, there was middle-aged men, there was girls and women and little kids all dressed in Godzilla shirts. And every, like, the minute the movie ended, like, you could hear a pin drop, how everyone was so respectful. You could hear the emotion, like you could feel how tense everyone was during that movie. And then once that logo came up before the credits, everyone was like standing up and cheering and applauding. Like that made it one of the best experiences for me, at least.
Yeah, with -1, my buddy and I, we were talking about it, and we were just kind of hanging out at the house, and then I'm just like looking at like the Marcus Theaters app on my phone. And I'm like, oh, it's screening in like an hour or two. You want to go see it? He's like, sure. Like, we had like no expectations, because I think we saw the trailer and we're like, I don't know, like it could be good. I don't. And then afterwards, it was the same experience where it was like, that was the greatest movie. I saw that movie 6 times in theaters. So
I saw it like 5 times, so I'm with you. Like, it was like, yes.
Yeah.
No, so 2014. So, usually with the Godzilla reboots in eras, Godzilla is against the military. Now, he is it a little bit in this movie, but this was the first Godzilla reboot where they introduced him again, but then they made him fight a monster, the Mutos. What do you think about the Mutos?
I think the Mutos, at the time, I was sort of iffy on them. They felt to me sort of like a retread of the Cloverfield monster. I mean, like, granted, I was a kid with that sort of mindset. The more I think about them, though, and the more I've kind of like grown with them, I think that I think it fits with what the movie's trying to do. They're a very tangible threat. In a way, it reminded me a lot of Godzilla 98, with how the main threat of that movie was Godzilla potentially having a bunch of eggs, and then they all hatch and take over the world. And I think that Mutos sort of like using that same format, but making it not Godzilla, was a genius tactic, because I think that's a very real threat that can be terrifying. It's almost like a xenomorph, like put that on Earth and it's horrifying. But with the Mutos, I like the way that they were used. I just wish that there was a little bit less of them and more on Godzilla. If there was like a meter where you could kind of like fix it, I would just tweak that a little tiny bit. But otherwise, I think they're wonderful antagonists. I think that it's funny now, considering what they're doing with their main monster antagonist in the MonsterVerse, how it's a big monkey and an ice dragon. Like how far we've come from these pretty realistic antagonists, that have an actual ecosystem, and now it's just big monkeys and ice dragons. And
I'm all for it, though. Like,
I am too. And the movie before that, it was Mechagodzilla, but it's just funny kind of like how it's progressed over time, and it went from really realistic to just like they're fighting in zero gravity now. Like at this point, it's all fun and games,
Yeah. No, I'm with you. The Mutos, when I first saw them, I liked them because it was a brand new monster. We weren't doing the whole let's bring back Mothra, let's bring back King Ghidorah. We'll get to that in King of the Monsters, but it was brand new. Like you had the one that has the electromagnetic pulse, and then the one that flies. Both are really interesting. I wish they were a little less like blocky. That's like the only thing I have to complain about their design. It's a good balance off of Godzilla, because Godzilla's more round compared to them. But I just feel like they were just like they look like something out of like Minecraft or Roblox. Like it was just kind of like one of those things.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, they're very rigid with their whole design. Part of me too is that I think it just felt like a mix of, I'll make this kind of like what I'm trying to say here. Pacific Rim, with their monster designs, their whole thing was, we're going to base, like this is going to be kind of like a sea urchin mixed with, this other animal. And so I understood a lot of that, and it felt very new and fresh and creative. But with the Mutos, I wasn't really sure sort of what it was based on, or like what the exact philosophy was behind it. And so that to me made it feel a bit off compared to other monsters that I had seen before. and it didn't really feel like it was something from Earth. You know what I mean? Like, it felt very not what I was expecting. Not that that's a bad thing, but I guess I had just seen Pacific Rim at the time, you know, as a kid, so it was like that was like the gold standard for brand new kaiju designs, you know, in the 21st century. So that was sort of my problem with it, was that it was like, I don't know what they were trying to kind of get across, but, you know, it's still a fresh and creative take, I think. So.
Were you disappointed when it came to watching Godzilla compared to Pacific Rim? Because Pacific Rim was a movie that came out of nowhere, had hardly any market. The only way I knew Pacific Rim was coming out because it had a trailer before The Hobbit, and I thought that was the Godzilla reboot at first.
I thought the same thing. Yep.
Because all you see is the giant, like in the trailer, it's just people, like the first teaser, you see people running, and then it's Gypsy Danger with that famous shot of him getting thrown over the bridge. I was like, oh my God, Godzilla, like, finally! Yeah. And then it's Pacific Rim. It's like, oh, okay, brand new. It's like, ooh, yay. Yeah. But a lot of people, going back and listening to people's thoughts, it seems like a lot of people were disappointed with Godzilla 2014 because Pacific Rim had come out, and Pacific Rim had a really good human compelling story, like really great action, and you had like 7 monster fights in Pacific Rim. Godzilla was more of a slow burn movie, more of a character-driven movie, it seemed like, and then it was very just kind of slow in comparison. So were you disappointed with Godzilla or no?
For me, I kind of had a thought of, well, I gotta say really quick with The Hobbit, I saw The Hobbit as well, and when I saw that shot where it was one of the characters like looking up as jets fly over in like a ruined city, I'm like, oh, this is the trailer. Like, I don't know how I didn't see this yet, you know, but
yeah.
So my dad thought the same thing too, but I don't think so, because with me, I had seen all the marketing, and I kind of thought, like, we're going to get something different from Pacific Rim. Like, Pacific Rim was very fast-paced, it was very energetic, it was action first. And with Godzilla, I was, based on all the marketing, I was anticipating it to be more of like almost like a disaster movie, rather than your typical kind of like big blockbuster action romp. So, not really. I do obviously wish that some of the action was more like that, but obviously we get that later down the line, so it's all good in the end. But as a kid, I loved it for what it was, yeah. Yeah,
I did too. What are your thoughts on the human portions for this movie?
I think that Aaron Taylor Johnson does the best with what he's given. I know that a lot of people kind of rip on him. I liked him in a lot of the stuff he's in more recently. I loved him in The Fall Guy. It was like one of his best performances. He was just this smarmy, you know, Hollywood actor, and he was so good in it. And it's like, I almost wish that, you know, you could go back and like show Gareth Edwards that movie and say, look, he can do more than just generic G.I. Joe guy. And so I think that with what he's given, he's really trying his best, but you know, there's just almost nothing there. And at the time, it was kind of like, you wrote it off like, I get it. You know, like, this is a movie where it's a Godzilla movie. The human drama doesn't have to be good. But then it's like, now that -1 has come out, it's kind of like, it's thrown that narrative out the window. But
yeah,
I just, you know, but then again, you're comparing like a Lamborghini to kind of like a Volkswagen Beetle. It's like, you know, they're both great in their own ways, you know, but I'll take the Lambo over the Beetle for sure. But, you know, it's just, they're okay. I think that Bryan Cranston was fantastic, and then to kill him off was, I mean, it's been said a million times, that was one of the worst creative decisions ever. But, you know, I think that the supporting cast is really solid, though. I think that Dr. Serizawa is fascinating. I believe his name is Admiral Holtz, you know, the general guy that's always talking to Serizawa.
He's really good.
Yeah, just very memorable with their delivery, with just who they are as characters. So, you know, even like the little kid that he saves on the train, you know, it's just like all these like little characters kind of add up and almost like adjust it a little bit. But it's just, if he and Elizabeth Olsen's character were more interesting, it would have been a much better movie. That's my only real gripe and the thing that kind of holds it back.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bryan Cranston is the best part, and that's undisputed, because just the way that he gives his performance, the way that his character is interesting, because he had to watch his wife die right in front of him. He is obsessed with this creature, even though he doesn't know what it is. And then he finally realizes it's the Mutos and that it's the government covering it up after all these years. Really interesting stuff. And his one part of the movie where he's like, it's going to send us back to the Stone Age. Like, that's iconic at this point. But I agree that it was weird to kill him off, but I didn't expect that, because I don't think anyone was, because he was so a part of the marketing
that played a big factor too. If it wasn't marketed like that, if it wasn't marketed as this is Heisenberg against Godzilla, then it would not have that decision would have not, like, it would have been kind of like, well, that sucks, but oh well. But now it's like it's just a part of the film's legacy is kind of what's affecting it, I think, at least, you know.
Yeah, it's weird. Okay, so the best part of the movie, the monster fights.
Yeah, 100%. They're grounded, they're realistic, but that doesn't mean that they're boring, you know, because I feel like a lot of people like to kind of equate that, and they're really, really fun to watch. I think that thankfully they fixed this with the most recent Blu-ray transfer. I bought it as soon as they announced it, but it was so dim before. The home video release was god-awful, and so thankfully I bought the 4K, like I think about a year ago, or maybe it was a couple at this point, I don't even know, but... and when I rewatched it, it was like watching it again in the theater. So you could see all the detail. It looked fantastic. Yeah, that scene though, where it's the constant. Gareth Edwards directed this perfectly, where it just felt like a tug of war of tension, where it's like, okay, Godzilla's got the upper hand, and then oh no, he doesn't. Oh, he does, and then it's just going back and forth while the soldiers are trying to destroy the eggs. It's like when I was watching that again, my most recent watch through, I'm like, man, I just wish this was the movie. You know, like, it starts with him just coming ashore in San Francisco, and it's these soldiers trying to take out the eggs, and the whole thing is just like a Mad Max Fury Road type of, like, you know, we never have any breaks, and it's just go, 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 go. You know, like, there's always stuff happening. And so, again, you know, it's criticizing the movie for something it's not, but, you know, just that end sequence is so phenomenal that I just wish that was the movie, because it builds up to it for so long. You're like, well, why couldn't we have just had this?
No, I agree. And the bad thing is, for me at least, I agree that transfer, like, I do not, when I watched that on Blu-ray when I got it, I was like, I don't remember it being this dark. And then seeing the 4K, it's like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yep.
But I agree, those monster fights, you could tell Gareth Edwards was a fan of Godzilla, and you knew exactly what he as a fan wanted to see, like, and it was stuff that us as fans never even like imagined Godzilla doing,
right?
Because first of all, like, he does like the traditional tail swipe, and that was straight out of one of the classics, like, but it kills him, like, that was surprising.
Yeah.
And then I want to say that one of the most exciting moments in a theater for me was when you heard that, like, thunder crack, and all of a sudden the screen just starts to ignite blue. You're like, oh, yeah.
So good how it builds up. It's one of those...
Because at that point, you
weren't sure.
Yeah, I was like, are they not going to have Godzilla breathe fire? Because that TriStar didn't. So you're like, are they going to not do it?
Well, because I remember there was the toy, and I always wanted that. I never got it, where it was the one where you grab the tail and you pull it forward, and then it shoots out like the atomic breath kind of piece of plastic. And I'm like, well, in the whole time in the theater, as it was like getting ready for that scene, I'm thinking, like, they made the toy. Like, I mean, I get that, like, you know, in the past they've made, like, here's a Spider-Man dune buggy, you know, like, so it's like, but it's in the character's thing, you know, like, so if they didn't have Godzilla breathe fire, like, it'd be so annoying. And then they did, and it was incredible. So
yeah, and then to know that, like, it's not just now America that's doing it, but Japan has even taken that into consideration, how Godzilla charges his breath now, because before it's always been where it starts from the head, goes down to its tail, or kind of like
it's
ignites,
like strobes.
Yeah, like in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla or Tokyo SOS, it does that, and then it charges up. But this was, like, I still think the second coolest. -1 outdid it, but this was the coolest one for me at the time, where it just goes, and then Godzilla, like, irks back, and you can see his chest puff up. It's like, oh yeah, and then it breathes fire, and I like how this fire looks out of any of the MonsterVerse, because it's not like a beam. It's more like this
vomit.
Mist.
Yeah, or like a vomit. Yeah.
And I really like that. I don't know why no one else has, like, taken that, but I just really like how this looks like kind of the mist almost. Like, it kind of evokes the 54 Godzilla almost.
Yeah. I love the sound design in that movie. It's so good. like you were mentioning, the build up to that, beam, but also just the sound that the Mutos make, like when they're, the scene I'm imagining is when Ford is sitting on like the train track and he's kind of like this, and it's like underneath him, and you can hear like the like all like the weird like sounds that it's like making with like I think they used a balloon, and I think they took like forks and were like rubbing it on the balloon, and then like slowed it down. There's this great behind the scenes thing on the document or on the on the Blu-ray where they go over all the like little things that they did. The Godzilla one that was fascinating was for the roar. They recorded the roar, and they had that, but then they played it in the streets of San Francisco at full volume, and they recorded it from far away, so it had that natural echo, and it bounced off the buildings, so it sounds bigger than it really is. So they did almost 2 versions of it.
I really like the roar in this. It's different than any other Godzilla roar, but it feels like Godzilla, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I agree completely. It's like like Gareth Edwards had said previously, where he said, they wanted to make the real Godzilla that the original was based off of. And to me, it would be like if someone heard that roar, they tried to replicate it, it would be the 54 roar. It's just so animalistic, but the way it bounces off everything is just so wonderful. Like, I'm a big sound guy, so for me, it's just like it's so good.
Yeah, especially when Godzilla has like that 2-minute long roar battle cry finally.
Yep.
That was like, you felt that in your chest in the theater. That was loud and proud.
Yeah. It was, for that moment was on par. I don't know if you've seen the Batman, but when he starts up the Batmobile right before the Penguin chase, and when you're in the theater, you feel that in your chest. Like, that was one where I was seeing that just like by myself in like an empty theater on like a Tuesday, but when I saw that, I'm like, oh my god! Like,
how the Batmobile screams at first, and then it starts revving like a muscle car. It's like, yeah.
That scene, I get hyped even just watching that at home. Still, like, it's just so good.
And so then this movie established something that is really cool that every other movie has done now, and that is like this finishing move for all the monsters.
Like a fatality.
Yeah, when Godzilla took that Muto and breathed fire down it until it ripped its head off, my mind was blown. I was like, yes, that they knew, Godzilla fans. Like, they knew what we wanted to see without us knowing.
Right. I agree completely. I was just getting into Mortal Kombat at the time, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is a fatality. Like, this is something you would see, like in one of those games. It was just so wild. And you could see it now in the 4K, transfer or whatever, but when he's like holding onto the head and he sort of like brings it down, you could see part of like the Muto spine like in the body. Like, it was so detailed. It's so gross, and it's like, you would never see that now. I feel like it's so graphic, but it just added so much to the movie, because it's like, well, of course that would, like, the monster would have, like, that's what would happen. It just, everything about it was just so well executed. The way too that they shot it, where it's just a wide and it just kind of holds on it as he does it. It's just incredible.
Yeah, this will be a problem as we get into some of the other movies, but this one, when you see a shot of Godzilla, it's not shaky cam, it's a wide shot for the most part, and you can see all of the action that's taking place.
Yes. Gareth Edwards addressed a lot of like that controversy too, where he was talking about how, people hated how you could only really see it in the dark. All the battle scenes were at night. And he said that came from him making Monsters. And with that movie, what they did was they would film everything at night. So with that movie, there's that scene with the gas station, where all the aliens are massive. They're looming over this lone gas station. And so they would do that to kind of hide the bad effects. And I think that if anything, that made this Godzilla movie age better. Like, it makes it so, like, you could watch it now and be like, yeah, these effects still hold up. I can't say the same about some of the other ones, but with this one for sure, though, it's like, you watch it and with that 4K, it's like, this holds up so well. Like, if you told me this came out like last week, I'd believe you with that CGI. I mean, this is a movie that's now a decade old, and I consider those effects to be up there with like Davy Jones, from Pirates of the Caribbean, and like Caesar from Planet of the Apes. I mean, like, it's top notch.
It'll be interesting because I've followed him as a director too, and to see him do Rogue One is the second best Star Wars movie you can fight me on that. I don't care. That
it's the best Disney one. I think we can agree on that. It's the best Disney one.
And then the creator, which no one saw and was
loved it.
Amazing.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
For such a like a lot of people, say -1 had a really but I would say that Gareth Edwards' budget for a Hollywood movie to this scale was incredible, and the graphics looked flawless. If Godzilla didn't come out, that would have won VFX.
I said the same thing to my mom because we always watch the Oscars every year. That's just like our tradition. We have a ballot sheet. We kind of like we do our guesses and everything. And for me, because she wanted to know kind of like, okay, what's the deal with the creator, And I'm like, well, if Godzilla -1 wasn't up for it, I would be rooting for creator because like that was just, it was so the way, and I know this is a Godzilla discussion, but just like some of those
Let's
shots.
talk about the creator.
Yeah. Some of those shots where like the little girl is like looking this way and the camera's on the side. You could like see through her head because of like all the gears and everything. It's just blew my mind. It's just so incredible. That was one where I was hyped about it when I first saw the trailer, and I convinced my dad to go and see it, and he was skeptical, and he just adored it. He was like,
I love that it was broken down into like sections. Like it was like part one. I was like, oh, we're in for something special.
And
like
it's not even that long of a movie too, so like it didn't need to do that, but it makes it feel faster somehow. I don't know like what the psychological effect is, but like pacing wise, it's a genius move. I think that more movies should use that when. If the pacing feels off. It's just a great way of sort of like segmenting specific moments.
Yeah, and then now he's been announced as a new Jurassic World director, which a lot of people are sick of. I am too. The Jurassic World trilogy is one of but him as a director for Jurassic World, I think there could be something very special here that people are going to overlook.
Yeah, I am not a big Jurassic Park fan. I love the first movie. I like the third one. I kind of have a soft spot for, but beyond that, it's like I like the Spinosaurus. I think it's so cool. The shot of it where it's coming towards the camera and you see it like in the background, it's like running towards. That's awesome. But that movie's terrible. Like in the long run, it really is. But the Jurassic World ones too. When I saw the first one, I was like, oh, like it's just the first movie again. And then when I saw the second one, I'm like, I don't remember watching this. Like it ended, and I'm like, did I just see the movie? And then with the third one, I don't even know if I saw it. Like it was
horrible. But I think for this one, if he harkens it back to the horror roots, if he makes it where it's like Godzilla, where it's like you see dinosaurs from the human, like makes it more like Steven Spielberg did it, where it's like you see the Brontosaurus and it looms up, or you see the T-Rex by the Jeeps. Make it like that. I think this could be like a flawless dinosaur movie. Maybe not a great Jurassic Park movie, but like could be a good, entertaining dinosaur movie.
I'm excited. I'm gonna see it. Anything Gareth Edwards makes, I will go out and see it in theaters because that guy's one of my favorite directors.
I know his style is just amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So now in 2017, since we've kind of done with Godzilla 2014, 2017. Or I guess we should harken it back to 2016. This is when they announced that finally, like, there was going to be, like, a Godzilla 2. Because it was greenlit, and they were going to do a trilogy of films. But then it kind of changed, and then they announced that, like, Kong Skull Island was going to get rebooted. And this is when a lot of the chitter-chatter, like, all of a sudden, like, a lot of people were like, ooh, are they gonna do a crossover?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they were like, yes, it's going to be called the MonsterVerse. This is going to be our cinematic universe like the Marvel movies. So what did you think about that when it was kind of like, were you excited? Were you...
Yeah, I was so excited because I saw the fan things. I knew that they were fan edits where it was like, we're going to get the Mothra movie and the Rodan movie, and we're going to get a Destroy All Monsters. And it's like, I remember seeing one, though, as a kid where it said Varan, and it's like, we're not getting a Varan movie.
I would love a Varan movie, though.
Yeah, but it would make $5 at the box office because it would be you and me that would see it and no one else. So, like, it would just be one of those where, like, but... I was excited, like the prospects of like what it could be in my brain. I'm like, okay, they could do Gorgo because Gorgo's public domain. They could do Cthulhu. Like I thought when I heard MonsterVerse, I'm thinking like they're gonna go beyond just Godzilla and Kong, and they haven't yet, but it could always happen. Who knows? But not, there's just so much potential there. I think that I wish they kind of tap into. But at the time, it was just pure excitement because of all the potential that this had. And Skull Island, I was super hyped for too.
Yeah, I was too. So Skull Island, generic thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, I love John C. Reilly in that movie. He carries the whole thing. It's so good. He's incredible. I love the setting of Vietnam. I think the music plays such a big factor too in why that movie works so well, and it feels on par with other Vietnam movies. Like, you strip the Kong aspect out of it and just make it like, these guys are trying to survive these like skull crawler things. Like it would be a fantastic movie already, but Kong makes it fantastic. I love how he's like a juvenile, so he's not like this experience. Like, he's not the Peter Jackson King Kong, where he's all weathered and scarred. Like he's still kind of like learning the ropes and everything. I love the creature designs. I like that they didn't include the prehistoric. Like, there isn't like a T-Rex fight because we've seen that before.
Thank you. I was dreading that in the theater. I was like, are we going to do a T-Rex fight?
They never did. And the skull crawlers are a great callback to the 33 King Kong, where Jack is in that cave, and that thing starts crawling up the, up the hill, and he cuts it down before it can get him. But like, it felt like such a love letter to King Kong as a character and not the King Kong movies that had come before. I think that it was a natural evolution of the character, and it brought the character forward, because at this point there had been, I think it was Kong, Son of Kong, the Dino De Laurentiis one, there was the Peter Jackson one, there's the sequel to the Dino De Laurentiis one as well, but it was just kind of like remaking the same thing over and over again in America. Obviously Japan had their own wonderful movies that they did with Toho.
The Lost movies too.
Yeah, but it's just like with this, it's like, wow. Like, I remember seeing it, just like that was a very refreshing take on the Kong character, and I was just very, very happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, me too, because growing up, I was a big fan of King Kong versus Godzilla and King Kong Escapes. Those two I loved to death. So going into this one, I was kind of like, okay, are we just going to do this exact same thing? Because that's the way the trailers kind of made it out to be, sadly. And luckily, when we get to it, we kind of get like a King Kong Escapes, where it's like, this is kind of just its own, like, there's like bits and pieces that are kind of pulled from the original King Kong. Like, it is about a group of survivors that go to the island of Skull Island, and they meet like the tribe and stuff, but there's no sacrificial girl or anything like that.
Right.
But I liked that it was it felt like a Toho movie, kind of, where it was like, it felt like, because some of my favorite Godzilla movies are the ones that take place on Monster Island, or the more Caribbean Godzilla movies, like Son of Godzilla. So this one was a lot like those, where it was like, this is kind of a goofy adventure, even though it's going to be horrific and people die, and but there's going to be lots of monster fights.
Yeah, the director of that, I love a lot of his work. He's been trying to work on a Gundam movie now for like almost a decade. Like, that's been something that's in like development hell, and I think he was also attached to do a Metal Gear Solid movie as well.
I was gonna say, because he hasn't done anything big since King Kong. Like, he's been
trying to develop a million things. Like, he was attached to an Akira movie for a little bit. He was attached to oh my god, like so many things. Like, it was Gundam. It was like every, like, all these like little specific properties where I'm like, oh, that could be cool, and then like just never came out. And I think his big thing now, it's still the Gundam project. I think he's still attached to that. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I hope he does something soon though, because I love his work. I love his vision with like what he tries to do. I think that this movie has so many great like moments, these little beats. It's been brought up constantly on Twitter, but the scene with the grenades, where the guy's about to, he's gonna sacrifice himself, and it knocks him into the wall. It's like perfect. That was great. It fit in with the themes of the movie. It didn't feel out of place. But also like the spider scene where they look over and then like that dude's whole body is just like impaled by the spider leg.
That was freaky.
That's so cool. It's so wild. But yeah, he has such an eye for fantastic, horrific shots, and I think he'd be a great fit for pretty much any property that he decides to work on. So I hope he gets whatever he's working on off the ground soon, because he's fantastic.
Yeah, when I was going into this movie in the theater in 2017 or whenever 17, I really had no expectations, and walking out of it, I liked it better than Godzilla 2014.
I did too. Yeah,
I thought that the human characters were very entertaining throughout the whole movie. You had a lot of great humor with John C. Reilly, as you were saying, and even just great leads. Like, you had Tom Hiddleston. Yep. You had Captain Marvel.
Brie Larson.
Brie Larson was actually like pretty nice in it, I would say. And the shots in it were incredible. Like, Godzilla 2014, has like one or two shots I can really like say like, okay, that was good. It's more so about like the whole movie is kind of like shot from the angles as we were talking about. Kong Skull Island has a lot of great like moments where you could take a picture of it. Like when Kong first shows up and it's that looming sunset behind him.
Yeah.
With all the helicopters coming in. Or when that one guy gets picked up by like the pterodactyl monster and like gets ripped in half and it's that sunset shot again. Or like Kong like ripping the octopus in half when he's like all tangled up. A lot of really cool shots in my opinion in this movie.
Yeah. I love the Triceratops skull, how they put like the minigun like through it and they're like shooting at him.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Yeah, Tom Hiddleston has like the gas mask on, he's got like the machete and it's the sword. It's the sword from the Japanese soldier at the start of the movie. And he's like cutting through the bats and stuff and it's like this is so cool. Like it's just it at times it felt like, you know, I'm watching one of the greatest, you know, like Kong movies ever. I mean, but then you remember the other ones that exist, and it's like, you know, this is a pretty stacked franchise. And speaking of stacked, too, the cast, like you said, you know, if your supporting cast is John Goodman, John C. Reilly, and Samuel L. Jackson, it's like you're set.
I forgot those were even in there.
Yeah,
like how stacked it is, and those guys did excellent. Samuel Jackson was Samuel Jackson, but I mean, that's all you need. And then John Goodman, I liked that he kind of played the crazy person from 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yep.
Like that was awesome. So like seeing him in this like crazed state again was awesome to see.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That whole movie though, it's so creative. I just like whenever I get a new TV, that's the one I put on. I don't know why, because it's so vibrant and you kind of like get the grasp of like, you know, like this is it. But it's just so many memorable shots. It's fantastic.
It's definitely a lot more colorful than Godzilla 2014 was a bleak movie color-wise.
Yes.
Grays, blacks, blues. Kong is like orange, like on the opposite scale. So I like that they differentiated it big time from Godzilla.
Yeah, that it did what it needed to do as the second installment in the cinematic universe, and that's make the world feel bigger and more diverse. And diverse in terms of like the actual like what we actually see, like the voices that are involved in this universe. You know, I'm glad, with all respect to Gareth Edwards, that he didn't direct that movie. You know, I like that every movie except for Godzilla vs. Kong and X-Kong, you know, but every movie has had different directors, you know, and I think that giving each movie a unique identity is perfect, and it keeps stuff fresh, you know, so we're not just watching the same thing over and over and over again.
No, I agree, and where was I going with this? I don't know. It was just a good movie. I liked that they took I'm a bit mixed on the Monarch-ness. Like I understand you need something that's tying the whole franchise together. Monarch being the main character, I guess, or the main thing throughout the franchise, I've been kind of mixed on. I just don't really like it that much being at the forefront. I like that it was kind of this mystery in the background in Godzilla 2014. I don't mind it in the television series that it's kind of explored there, but in the movies, I felt like they should have still kept it in the background more, if that makes any sense.
My issue with it is that they made it S.H.I.E.L.D. from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They made it's just S.H.I.E.L.D. now, you know, whereas before it was like a shadowy kind of like government group, you know, where you would expect them to have like a black site somewhere, but that's it. And now, you know, they have like a hover carrier, like it's literally just S.H.I.E.L.D. And so I think if they would have kept it where it's this kind of like shadowy group, you know, and you make it almost more ominous and sinister than like, you know, what they kind of did with it later down the line, it would have been a lot better. I think too that like in general, my main issue with the MonsterVerse as it is right now has nothing to do with tone, it's of scale, and that's that for a cinematic universe, we have two consistent characters, and that's it. It's Godzilla and Kong. You know, like, yeah, there have been, you know, like Millie Bobby Brown has been in a couple of the movies, but I wish that we would have more monsters, you know. It doesn't have to be like a movie, you know, but like, I did a video where I pitched the MonsterVerse going forward, and I had this idea of like an Ultra Q series where it would be each episode is like a new monster, and it kind of just introduces the world and makes it seem bigger. And that's sort of my problem, is that it just... They stopped here with Godzilla and Kong, and I wish that they just would have introduced more monsters, even like side monsters that would have reappeared more often, you know? Those are my biggest gripes. But beyond that, like, I think that as a second installment, it does everything it needed to do and then some.
Yeah, especially with the post-credits scene. It finally established, because at this point you had Godzilla, and it was kind of like there was this... They had like a teaser of like Godzilla 2 when it was called, and it was Let Them Fight, and it had like the shadows or the silhouettes of Mothra and Rodan and King Ghidorah. It was like not released online. It was kind of leaked, and it was like, these are the next monsters. But then in like an interview with Michael Dougherty, he's like, oh, I didn't have to if I didn't want to. But this fully established that in 2 years, in 2019, they were going to do King Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan.
Yeah. Going into Godzilla King of the Monsters, I was so excited. It was like, we got the original monsters. I was excited that they did something fresh, but now it's like, we're the third movie in. Let's do some callbacks. Let's make this fun. Let's make this, like the old Showa movies. Let's bring these in, but make it like big Hollywood blockbuster and essentially streamline these characters. And I think the movie did a pretty good job with that. I don't know. What about you?
Okay, so Godzilla King of the Monsters was the most excited I'd been for a movie in a long, like, since 2014.
Yeah.
Even overpassing Shin Godzilla when that was coming out. And Kong Skull Island and all, I think, because at this point the anime, like the first one at least, might have been out. I don't know.
I think they wrapped up in 2018, so I think they all would have been, I don't know. Because those movies, I feel like, were just a fever dream that I wish never happened.
They were very bad. Like, the first one's okay, and then the rest are just like, what is going on?
I think I fell asleep halfway through the third one and just went, you know what, whatever. It's fine.
And so, this is the most... Like, I was more excited for this than Avengers. I was more excited for this than anything that was coming out this year. And it was a stacked year of movies, 2019 was.
Oh, God, it was so good. I mean, we had Parasite, we had all these, like, Oscar movies, but then we had all, like, the big dumb blockbusters like King of the Monsters, and was Endgame 2019? Right?
Yeah,
or was it Infinity War? Okay, Endgame.
Endgame was a month before Godzilla, so you had Endgame and
That's
then Godzilla.
Right, yep, yeah. That's kind of what killed Godzilla at the box office, too, because it was like, people were still seeing Endgame.
It's kind of weird, like, the only thing that Godzilla had against it was, like, some of the after effects of Aladdin. And then...
Oh, that's right. That came out. I completely forgot that movie existed.
It launched with Rocket Man. Like, that's the only competition it had. And so, for me, walking into the movie, I was excited. Mm-hmm. Halfway through the movie, I knew this was one of the worst Godzilla movies, in my opinion.
Okay. That's fair.
It's
I disagree, but it's fair, No,
I know. This is a very, and I did a video on it explaining my thoughts and going really in depth. But this is when, I just don't think Michael Dougherty was the greatest choice of a director, and I think that he's a good Godzilla fan. Like, there's a lot of great interviews with him. There's one where he, I show where he talks about Godzilla versus Megaguirus, where the woman hops on Godzilla and shoots him with a a tracking dart. So he knew Godzilla lore, but when I'm watching the movie, I question how much like he actually was a fan of Godzilla, because there's just some things in it that I felt were not well done. I think there's really great ideas, like the Oxygen Destroyer is a great idea to introduce again, having Mothra and King Ghidorah and Rodan, but the way it's utilized, in my opinion, is not... It doesn't work at all, in my opinion. Yeah.
I think really quick before you mentioned with Rocket Man, my mom and brother went to go see Rocket Man. My dad and I went to go see Godzilla. They were right next to each other in the theaters. And you could hear during the Rocket Man movie, during a sad scene, just Godzilla roaring. And so that was, whenever I think of that, I just immediately, it's like, oh yeah, those two came out at the same day. That'd be a fun Oppenheimer Barbie thing if that was like so, but yeah, when I saw it, I was just like, okay, this felt like a remake of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, but better, and I liked that. And to me, it was like, okay, this is what I want the MonsterVerse to be from now on. And I understand that we kind of differ from there. But what I like is it made the world feel bigger. It introduced all these new ideas, and in a way, that's also kind of how it falls apart too, because it's sort of like we're introducing the Oxygen Destroyer, which in the original movie was very, very meaningful. It was quite literally
and it's
the
like a
entire
2-second
crux of it.
scene, and it's introduced on an iPad. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and then it just goes away and it never comes back ever again. Like,
yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we have this thing that can kill all life in the ocean. Never mentioned again.
It makes no sense whatsoever, and it felt very disrespectful. That is one of my least favorite aspects of the movie, is that it just felt very, very disrespectful to the 54 film in that specific regard. And, I could rip apart how they, like, marvelized the MonsterVerse from here on out. People like to rip on Godzilla versus Kong for that, but it's really started here.
That's not even my complaint. I like that they're actually, like, making it like, because that's the way the original Showa era was, where it's like all these different solo monsters. Godzilla was their like Avengers movie almost. The problem that I had with this movie was the way it was shot and executed mostly. Okay. A lot of its dialogue is given through like iPads and like press conferences. So like when I think that's very lazy when all of a sudden you have the one lady that's crazy in the movie.
Oh,
and
Vera Farmiga?
And she starts delivering her lines like a PowerPoint presentation. It's like, okay. And then
they're cutting to like pollution, like video. It's like, who edited this? Someone had to have edited this.
It's very much like they were like, okay, this is not exciting dialogue. We have to have it for the guys that have no attention span. Yeah. But then the Godzilla scenes, I like on paper. I really do. When it comes to bringing back these monsters that we haven't seen at this point now for 15 years, or maybe even 20 years at this point, since Final Wars. Yeah,
because Ghidorah was a different Ghidorah in Final Wars, so I think that one would have been 2001. Was the last like, King Ghidorah?
Kaiser Ghidorah was in Final Wars.
Yeah.
But I was excited just like anyone else. And when the designs were leaking, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Like Mothra as a wasp and like actually getting an edge. I was in love with it. The way the fights are shot is awful in my opinion.
Yeah.
Horrendous. This is one of the worst movies where it cuts back to the humans way too many times in between a fight. And shaky cam and the particle effects. Like, I don't think the CGI is that great, but then they tried to hide it with the weather effects. And then anytime one of the monsters comes in, they have these elemental effects of like, I like that like Godzilla comes in with like blueness. Like it's kind of like a calling card almost whenever you see that. I like that. But man, it takes away from the scene and it makes it way too, like, I just don't like it in my opinion. I think the Antarctica battle is shot really bad. How it's like all in the human, like he tried to do with Gareth Edwards, where it's like we're gonna have this scene shot in the plane from the human perspective, but then it's like rolling around, and then like you see like hardly anything.
It was like a theme park ride.
Yeah. It's just I don't like that kind of film style or making. And then they have moments that we've never seen in a Godzilla movie before. I was excited when Rodan was doing like all these twirls and I was like, okay, this is awesome. And then all of a sudden he's like, we got to have him fight King Ghidorah. I'm like, oh, no way. They're going to do something that's never been done before in Godzilla, where Rodan by himself takes on King Ghidorah.
And an aerial battle, too, you know? Like,
and they fly up and they have that amazing shot where it's like they clash and then it zips back to the humans. It's like, hold on a minute. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And then it all takes place on an iPad. It's like...
Yeah. Same with now that you mention it, the scene where all the Titans, which I hate Titans, I wish to just call them kaijus. You know, like that makes me so upset.
Titans either.
Yeah, but where all the Titans like are like rising up, and again you see it from like security cameras, and we hardly get any really cool money shots of some of them. You know, like if you go on Wikizilla now, it's like half of them don't even have pictures, and it's like then because they marketed this as saying like this has more monsters than any other Godzilla movie. But it's like that's
and
the
not monsters
true.
Are cool.
Yeah, but you don't get to see them.
I like the saber-tooth, like what was it called? Like the elephant.
Yeah,
monster.
Behemoth. I have a figure of him somewhere.
No way.
It's a little tiny one. Hold on, let me see if I got him. I know I have him. Hold on. He's somewhere up here.
Like, I like a lot of the new kaiju that are introduced, but we hardly see them. It's like they were making it out where, like, Godzilla's going to take on everybody, like a Final Wars situation. And then at the end of the day, it was like, there was like 2 seconds of like that. I'll give him credit where it's due, where the monsters show up more than 2014 and it's spaced out a little better, which like every 20 minutes you get Godzilla scenes. I like that. But man, they do way too much of like, here's a 2.5 second shot of Godzilla, cut back to the humans, cut back to Godzilla, cut back to the humans. Like when the final like triumphant battle where it's like Godzilla's coming in, the music scope, Bear McCreary with his Godzilla theme, everyone's shooting at Ghidorah, and like Godzilla starts running at Ghidorah, and they have that clash, and then it goes, hey, we're gonna have the ship come right down in the shot of the frame. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. The thing is, though, where I'm going to have to disagree with you, I think that a lot of the framing does work when it's not a battle. And what I mean is the shot of Godzilla where he comes up from the water after getting juiced up, and he shoots that atomic breath up into the sky, and the way they kind of like scale all that is really, or, the way that it looks where it's just that general shot. I mean, that was my wallpaper for like a year or two. It was just, that shot is magnificent. I love the shot of him where he's looking at the sub, and he's like right there, and you get that gist of like how huge he really is. I think that this movie really nailed scale. I like a lot of the shots. Like, I think it's the Fenway thing. It was right after Godzilla comes in with the jets, and they start fighting for a bit with Ghidorah. And then you see that kind of like in the background, and then in the foreground, like you said, that ship kind of lands. You see the soldiers get out and everything. I know you might not like that. I like that it establishes scale. Now, I do think they should have cut back to the monsters, and it just got way too much into the human drama for that final segment.
Yeah. But oh my goodness.
A lot of it, though, in my opinion, that is one of the most like reverent movies when it comes to the Toho series, with the music and everything. It truly felt respectful and like an honest like homage. I think it's the best Godzilla fan film ever made. I really do. Like, that's one where if you consider it that way and you look at it through that lens, I think that it's a lot more favorable. And I don't mean that as like a bad thing, because I love and respect fan films, but that's one where it's like, I don't know. It's a mixed bag, but I like it a lot. I really do. It's a guilty pleasure.
It's one that I just can't enjoy that much because, like I said, I'm willing to part with a bad story if the Godzilla scenes are excellent. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the ideas in this movie are incredible. Like, Gareth, like, you felt him as a Godzilla fan. There was just some things where it's like, okay, why are you cutting to the humans now? Like, at this, like, before this made sense to cut to the humans characters, but right when the monsters clash, or like when this is happening, I think that underwater battle too with Godzilla and King Ghidorah has some of the worst CGI I've seen in a massive
I don't even remember
movie.
It, so I don't remember that. Was that when the oxygen destroyer takes out? Okay.
Right before that, when like King Ghidorah is coming after like the giant plane, and then like Godzilla comes out of nowhere.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And like he rips off his head. I like that King Ghidorah has like rejuvenal powers too, but I don't like that he like poops out his head in like 5 seconds. I think that's a little like just kind of like okay, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, there's a lot of love that's given to the Toho line, and there's a lot of great Easter eggs in it. Like, Anguirus is in the
and like that temple.
Yeah. And I don't like that they killed off Shirazawa in this. I like that Shirazawa was kind of this Samuel Jackson character for like this universe. And it's a good scene, how it's built up, like how he says goodbye, friend, and like the music is swelling and then it blows up and whatever. But there was not enough time to establish an emotional reaction for that scene.
Because they literally say we don't have time to mourn, like we need to go now. And it's like, well, this dude was the main character for most of like what felt like this MonsterVerse. So I do agree with you there. Yeah.
If like they killed him off in Godzilla versus Kong or Godzilla X Kong, then it would have been like, oh no. But like him getting killed off in this, it's like, well, guess he's gone.
Yeah, right. I love so much of the imagery and the music, and it just all works for me so well that I kind of overlook a lot of that. The imagery, some of my favorite imagery is like with King Ghidorah right after he gets his middle head ripped off. Was it the right one? I think it was the right one. One of them. Yeah. And he's like spreading his wings on the volcano with the crosses.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's so good. The music too. It has the best music out of any MonsterVerse movie. Bear McCreary just killed it. I would just kill to have him back for the next one, but just so much of it kind of overshadows it. But my biggest gripe, I think, with it has less to do with the movie and more just with future installments. So much stuff was just like disregarded. Like Alan Jonah was mentioned in the Kong Survivor Instinct game. He actually appears in it, and I played this on stream. but like you shouldn't really be addressing this specific plot. Kind of like it just went nowhere, and they tried addressing it in this video game that's canon to the MonsterVerse, but it's like, what happened? Like, where did he go? He shows up in this movie, and then he's never mentioned again in Godzilla vs. Kong.
There's a lot of weird plot points, like even big ones, like we'll get into when there's Monarch Legacy of Monsters, where it's like, hold on a minute, this changes the fundamentals of the entire MonsterVerse
I gotta say,
story.
I haven't seen that show. I haven't, because we got Apple... Yeah, I know.
It's so good. It's actually like really good, and the human story is really good.
I'm not a TV guy. I don't have the attention span for it. I'll literally I'll start a show, get halfway through, and then I'll stop watching. Like I think I watched The Penguin. The Penguin is fantastic. That's the only show I've seen, I think, in the past 3 years all the way through. But that's it. I can't.
The MonsterVerse Monarch series establishes that the portal rifts in the show are a different time period. So, for example, someone at the beginning of the series in 1950, in the 1950, or maybe even before that, goes into one of those portals and isn't seen. So then, as an old man in modern times, they go into one of these portals and they see the lady and she's still the same age. And they establish that when you go inside the Hollow Earth, it's this different time period. And that's why people haven't seen Godzilla or some of these monsters for so long, because when they go inside the Earth, it's like 500 years go by all of a sudden in 5 seconds when you're outside the Earth. But that's a big breaking thing when all of a sudden in Kong versus Godzilla or X-Kong, they're going in the portal and then they come out like the same day, or Godzilla shoots his breath all the way down inside the Hollow Earth. And it's like, hold on a minute.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
but
there's so much though with King of the Monsters where I'm like the Oxygen Destroyer. Any Godzilla fan that hears that was used will go, okay, where's Destroya? Destroya has to come up, and it
was established perfectly, like in the ocean. It's like, oh, a crustacean. It's like,
like that would have been the perfect. I love Mechagodzilla, but it's like that would have been the perfect enemy to fight in Godzilla versus Kong, because you could have easily played into that, and that's why Godzilla's acting all nuts, because he might have saw something, and it kicked. He got beat up under the ocean, so now he's freaking out, and that's why he's acting weird. And then Kong can fight, and then they team up and fight Destroya. You could have done that, but it's just, I feel like the MonsterVerse just struggles simultaneously. It benefits from having different creative voices behind it, but it struggles in that there is no coherent story from one movie to the other because there's so many retcons. That's my biggest gripe.
You really need a Kevin Feige behind, or a James Gunn behind the scenes, where they are the biggest Godzilla fan, and they're like, okay, you can do this with your movie. You can do anything you want, but you have to keep this in mind when you do it.
Yeah.
Because of this previous movie. You just have to, this is your only thing you cannot do, or you can do.
Yeah. It's why I'm glad that they spaced out the releases, too. Otherwise, we would have had, a Star Wars type of thing, where it's there are so many contradictions from one movie to the other. The Disney Star Wars, where it's okay, so this happened, and then this happened, and then now we have no clue why this wasn't mentioned.
You can kind of just turn your brain off because of how far
apart
apart they are. It's
and it was I haven't seen it in a couple of years. I'm sure it's fine. And then when you marathon them all, you're like, oh my god, there are so many drop plot points from one movie to the other.
Yeah, but I mean, just to kind of go back to King of the Monsters. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I do think it's one of the weakest Godzilla movies, in my opinion, just because when Godzilla's there on screen, it's shaky cam, it's very quick cuts, it's very much, we're going back to the humans, back and forth, and the human story is, I'm sorry, people love Millie Bobby Brown. I do not like her in the MonsterVerse at all. I think that her stories are just very cookie cutter. She's a good actress, but it's I don't, it's the worst human character possible in a movie you could have. And then, just like I said, the amount of good ideas are in the movie. It's just that there's a lot that is stacked against it in execution, in my opinion.
My problem with Millie Bobby Brown in these movies, I think she does a good job, but the fact that she wasn't in Godzilla X Kong feels well, then why have we been following her from one movie to the other, and now she's not in this third one? And what I was kind of thinking was, she's going to be the Mickey of how Mickey was, from the Heisei era. And I'm okay, Mickey's going to be Millie Bobby Brown. That's what they're going to kind of do, is have her where eventually they're going to establish something, but now that's kind of like what Gia is, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but it's just there was no significant payoff for her character. Like, we follow her for this long, and then, like, oh, she's gone now. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was just Stranger Things 3 came out, I think, at the time, and it was like, okay, we got her in it, the big payoff. And it sadly did not pay off for this movie because it was a big bomb.
Yeah.
For the first time, the MonsterVerse bombed, and it was sad to see. Like, I mean, as much as I don't like this movie, it was sad to see that even though Godzilla didn't have that much competition, it was sad to see that it still did not make its money because it was just way too expensive. Like, it was like $250 million for production.
Way too much. Yeah, and it did not need to. I think a lot of that is because of the cast. I mean, they got, oh my God, what's his name? Is it something Chandler?
Something, I don't know. Kyle Chandler.
Yeah, Kyle Chandler. I was gonna say Kevin. Yeah, no, Kyle Chandler. You know, like, he's a great actor, and it's like, why wasn't it just him? Like, you could have had like anyone play the daughter. You know, it's about him being estranged from his family, even though that's virtually just the first movie, the Gareth Edwards one, in a way. You know, like, I don't know. I feel like consistency has been the biggest problem with the MonsterVerse at that point, and even now. You know, I think it doesn't know what it wants to be identity wise and with characters.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, I mean, even in this Showa era, when that was an interconnected universe, you had every single movie be a different story, and
and Akira Takarada, Akira Takarada plays like 8 different characters.
Yeah,
like,
that's
it's fine.
But you have to have, like, when you're trying to be like, okay, we're gonna make the MCU of Godzilla, and you're actually gonna take it serious. It's like you got to have some establishing rules. You can have it where different characters come in, or I like kind of what they were doing, where it's like one character passes the torch on to the next character in the movie. So, like, Shirazawa passed the torch on to Millie Bobby Brown in a way. Millie Bobby Brown passed the torch on to the one Kong lady in the Godzilla versus Kong.
Dr. Andrews, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. I glaze over when I watch some of those movies. It's like
I don't care, man, the names. And then her character kind of like passes the torch on to like the Kong expert in Godzilla X Kong in a way, if he's going to show up in the next movie. So
yeah,
I don't mind that. I definitely do agree where it's like there is such big contradictions where it's like, okay, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I agree. It was one though where, like, when it ended, it's like, okay, at the time, right after it came out, I'm like, there are so many setups for future things where I was happy and excited, because it's like, you know what, it might not pay off now, it's going to pay off later, but I still love this movie. I still do now. I think, you know, your critiques are completely valid when it comes to, you know, not being able to see a lot of the action and it cutting away too much, but I think it just has to do with, like, the way that everything is treated with you know, the director. I just think that he handled it so well that I couldn't picture anyone else kind of doing it that way and making it really, really work the way that he did it and the way that he kind of envisioned it. And that's why it just works so well for me. I just think there's just such like grandiosity, like, with these monsters and the way that they're treated. There's so much reverence, and I think that's why it just works so well for me. I think it was just great after seeing, you know, like the '98 movie. It's like, you know, it's fun. It's good to see an American movie take the Japanese movies seriously. And 2014 did that, but this one took all the movies seriously. Like the Showa ones, even the goofiest ones imaginable, it still went, they're valid. You know, and to me, that I love that.
No, I agree. Like I said, I probably would have enjoyed the movie if Godzilla scenes you could see, it wasn't edited like a death metal music video, and they, like, took the Vaseline off the scenes, man. Like, just the weather effects were way too much for me. But that's just me. Like, everything else I think was fine. Like I said, it was just an execution. I just think you could have handled it a lot better. If Michael Dougherty had wrote it, or had been, like, the Godzilla, like, person in the background, kind of given, like, if he was like the Kevin Feige, I think it would be fine. But then you have someone more experienced behind the camera, like maybe a Gareth Edwards, or just the guy who directed Godzilla versus Kong and stuff like that. Like, just someone that knew how to shoot monster scenes, I guess, or have extended CGI shots.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
What'd you think of Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla finally being in a movie?
Oh, I love that song. I just played it live with my band, so that was really fun.
That's cool.
Because I got them hooked on it. But I love this version. This version was so cool. I remember when it came out, my girlfriend hated it because I played it nonstop in the truck. Anytime we go anywhere, it was like first song on, boom. And anytime she heard those chants, like the yo, she just immediately was like, dear God, make it stop. Like it was all, I think that was my most listened song of that year on Spotify. It was like it. And I love System of a Down. Like I'm huge into that band. So hearing Surge sing that song, I'm just like, oh my God, like this is something I never knew that I would ever want, but like I'm so happy it exists. Like
to hear it at the end of the credits was so incredible. Like that was like, this was every Godzilla fan like that wanted this. Yeah. So I agree.
Yeah. That credit sequence too is one of the best scenes in that entire movie, which sounds like a slight at the movie. But like all the little homages, like, there's a Steve Martin that writes an article and you see
I saw that.
Steve
that was
Martin.
Really cool.
Yeah, and it teases like Biollante, Mechagodzilla, like Jet Jaguar. Like there's so many things where like it kind of like teases it. Of course, they haven't gone anywhere with most of those yet, but still, like at the time, it's like this has so much potential to lead into so many new things. And yeah, as I walked out of the theater happy, just like, this could be incredible.
Yeah, I sadly didn't, and I'm still just, those are just my thoughts. Like I'm just like, okay, if the monster scenes were better shot and executed, I would have liked it a lot better. But for now, I think that's like my least favorite in the MonsterVerse.
That's fair. Yeah. I think everyone has to have a least favorite with the series. And we all might disagree on it. And mine's the most recent one that came out, so I guess we could talk about that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, so. That's going to be interesting because I think
it's funny because my most popular video is me defending it, but
okay. So that'll be interesting. I thought this would be perfect just because of like everything that went on when Once Minus 1-2 came out. Like that was the strangest time, and it still kind of is to be in the Godzilla sphere of like just how like random people are coming in and they're like, this is the way the franchise needs to be, and it's like hold on a minute, buddy.
Well, and it's weird too with the fandom too, because how if you criticize certain aspects of the MonsterVerse, they'll think that you're trying to be like one of those people, and it's like, well, you can be critical of this and still be a fan. That's
exactly
something that I think that a lot of people I think should probably understand. And the concept too of bad takes. Like I've said stuff where people disagree with it and they like personally attack me. It's like we could be civil. There's like, this is not fact, like everything about these movies are subjective at the end of the day, like I completely disagree with a lot of your takes on King of the Monsters.
Yeah, and that's fine.
We can have a perfectly civil conversation about it. Like it is not life or death.
Yeah, like I mean, and it's so weird that like once Minus One came out, everyone's like, Godzilla needs to be serious. It's like, guys, Godzilla has been goofy since the start too. It's like Godzilla has been taken serious. But like once Raids Again came out, all cards were off the table as to what a Godzilla movie could be.
Even then in 54, like he looked goofy in certain shots. Like it's, that goes back even that far. I mean, like there was an original scene where it was going to be a gag. It was his first appearance over the hillside. He would have had a cow in his mouth. And they felt that the scale was too off. And so they decided to go with the shot where he didn't have the cow in his mouth. It's right, that iconic hill scene, where he comes up from the side. And that shot is lost, but there's a ton of art that they made at the time they were prepping for it. But, like the goofiness has always kind of been there. I mean, you have to have a sense of like humor with it when you're making a giant monster movie because it's so out there as a concept. Like you have to embrace that. At the end of the day, it's just true. I mean, even Minus One has a couple moments where it's more human-centric, humor, but still, like it is what it is. Like, yeah, like when they're standing by the boat and he's like, oh, this is the boat, and they're like, yep, this is what's going to protect us from the mines, like. Or
like in the English, I think it's lost in the English dub of it, but like when Godzilla finally like grabs the other boat in its mouth and they go, everyone's like, like that's kind of like a funny moment, like oh crap, get out of there now.
Yeah. It's just one of those where the franchise has always had moments of like that. I love Shin Godzilla. Right, and people always kind of like draw comparisons to that too, but it's like that movie has some funny moments too.
Yeah, when like all of a sudden the Americans come in and they're like, "Yay, go America!" It's like,
yeah, or like when the guy with the towel around his neck just all of a sudden just goes, "Oh," because he found out about the blood coagulant, and he just starts freaking out for like a good minute before he says anything. It's
yeah, and he like starts like going like, it's like, what is going on right now?
There are moments of humor throughout, and it's what makes the franchise memorable. It's what makes it stand out. I mean, I'll take that over some of the more dour moments, in like
I will take Godzilla flying in more than any. Like I wish that would have happened in Godzilla X Kong. Like people thought like Godzilla running was. I was like, no, let's have him in zero gravity. Like when all of a sudden like burn fire and start shooting backwards.
Yeah, you can have both, because I always think of it this way. We can have Adam West as Batman, and we can have Christian Bale as Batman.
Yes.
And both are completely valid interpretations of the character. Why not the same with Godzilla, you know?
And it's not like all of a sudden that someone has been like, I'm going to do a goofy version of Godzilla. It's like, since Godzilla raids again, and since Godzilla versus Kong, or King Kong versus Godzilla, it's been goofy. There's been goofy Godzilla moments. There's been goofy moments with Godzilla. The most famous Godzilla meme when he takes off running and plows into Megalon.
Yep.
It's like, come on, guys. And you're arguing that Godzilla should be only serious. It's like, not really.
Yeah. So, Godzilla versus Kong. What was that like for you as a fan?
Okay, so this is the first Godzilla movie I didn't see in the theater, actually, because COVID was going on at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it. It was on HBO Max. And I didn't like the human stuff. Obviously, it was like just trash. Everything with the monster stuff I loved, because it was everything that was my complaint in Godzilla King of the Monsters, where it was like wide shots, long takes, no shaky cam, and you could see everything. Everything else, I can turn my brain off for it. Yes. Like, if that's how King of the Monsters was, I would have been able to, like, say, okay, it's a monster flick, that's what we're there for. But that's why everything else, I can kind of nitpick a lot of the other stuff in King of the Monsters. If it was like Godzilla versus Kong, where it's like I could see all the fights and it was well shot and everything else wouldn't matter to me. I'm there for Godzilla.
Yeah. I was so hyped for this. I don't know if you remember, but like it felt like the trailer was never going to come out.
Yes, and all you could see was that one like punch that never impacted.
Yeah. And then when the trailer did come out, they show Mechagodzilla in the first like 2 seconds.
I hated that. Because as a fan, as fans, you see metal, you're like, oh, Mechagodzilla.
Yeah. But I saw it in theaters because, I live in the middle of nowhere. So it was one of those where it's like, even then we had it where like with the theater, like you had like your party, and then there was like, you had like that row and that was it. Like no one could sit in. So it was like well spaced out to the point where it was safe and everything. And
they didn't do that for us. They were just like, it's whatever.
Yeah. So we saw it, and it was, there's a Snapchat thing where I posted it on my story, and it's me and my buddies, and the thing was like, just had a religious experience in the theater watching Godzilla versus Kong. And I see that every year on like the 1 year anniversary, like every year anniversary, for that picture, and it makes me laugh because like when Kong killed Mechagodzilla, it was like I never thought I'd ever see that in a movie. Like he used an axe to the Godzilla spine. It's like, this is like insanity, and I just adore it. Yeah, it's definitely a movie where, looking back on it, it feels like a movie that was made to be chopped up as clips on YouTube. Like the fight scenes are incredible, but those are the best parts of the movie. And
everything else is I couldn't even tell you what the story was about.
Right, yeah. And so it's just one where it's like, and I was hoping that Godzilla X Kong would kind of like just embrace more of that. Like we're just going to constantly have like fights. I don't know. But my issues with Godzilla versus Kong, and then I'll get into the stuff I love, because there's more that I love than what I hate, but it's, with my main issue is the sense of scale and a lot of the camera movements. The scale felt like non-existent. I had no clue how big these monsters were, and at times at its best, it worked really well. At its worst, it reminded me of like the Bayformers, Michael Bay, like Revenge of the Fallen, where I'm like, what am I looking at half the time? Because it just felt like a CGI video game cutscene. But like some of the camera movements gave me like motion sickness. Like there's that shot of Godzilla in Pensacola where the cars are on the bridge and he knocks the bridge, and then it's like the car like just starts flipping and the camera's like this as it like goes into the water. And it was like, okay, I don't know what just happened there, but there were moments where I just wasn't a huge fan of how it was shot. And I've gone, you know, in my videos talked about that too, how just my main issue with Adam Wingard as a director is more his sense of scale than anything else. I think that he does a perfectly fine job with a lot of other stuff, but that's my biggest gripe with his Godzilla movies, is that the scale just was not there for me. But otherwise, though, I thought this was just fun. Like, it's one of the most fun movies I've ever seen in a theater. Giving Kong a weapon, and again, taking advantage of him as a character is so great, because he's a fantastic character with so much potential. And it's like he can do more than just climb an Empire State Building and die. Like, it's just, there's so much you can do with Kong. But yeah, I thought that this was a great modern remake of sorts of King Kong versus Godzilla in a way that didn't feel like it was just a shot-for-shot remake. It was just very well done. Mechagodzilla's cool. Not a huge fan of the design. It might be my least favorite besides the anime one.
Ready Player One had a way better design, in my opinion.
I love that design. It's so good.
Especially because I read the book of Ready Player One before that, and I'm like, there's no way they're going to have Kiryu. And then all of a sudden they do have a version of it. I was like, I love you, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, because Kiryu is my favorite. I think I literally have one. Like
I got one!
Yeah.
I got the Godzilla against...
Yeah, I bought this guy on Godzilla Day, and he's huge. Like, this is my hand, and this is how big he is.
Oh
like
my goodness, that is amazing. I just got this one at like a...
This is the size comparison. I have a different... Oh, wait, let me do this in a way that makes sense. I want one of those with, like, the cannon on the shoulder, because I only have, like, this guy. But yeah, this is how big he is, roughly, so it's like...
Oh, yeah, the jet black one. I did see that one on sale.
Yeah. This one I bought at G-Fest. I have so many Kiryus where, like... It has, like, it's like a model kit that someone put together, but I bought it completed. So, like, it's missing some pieces. Like, the spines are missing, but it's so cool. Yeah, I love Kiryu.
Kiryu is, like, one of the coolest designs, and so...
Oh, I found Behemoth. Oh, I dropped him. Yeah, I have Behemoth.
Oh, that's cool, man.
But... All right, sorry about the little show and tell segment, but...
Everyone's going to be like, what are these guys talking about?
Yeah. No, I love Kiryu. Kiryu's incredible.
Oh, I do too, especially those two movies, Against and Tokyo SOS, are masterclass. Yeah, I agree. When it comes to Godzilla versus Kong, I don't really ever take scaling as a criticism. Just for me personally, like if it's not there, I don't really care. Mm-hmm. Just because a lot of the Showa movies and a lot of Heisei movies don't have a lot of that. It wasn't until I would say, like, maybe some of the early Showa movies did, but I wouldn't say it was until the Millennium era that scaling was really shown. Like, I always think of, like, the iconic shot of Godzilla 2000 when, like, his face looms in the car, or, like, foot stomp when, like, they're backing up, or a lot of scaling started to come into the early 2000s when they could. So scaling's not really that big of a deal to me. But I do agree this one does have a lot less of it compared to King of the Monsters or Kong or 2014.
To me, it's not an issue with suits. I think that's different. I don't know why, but like with CGI, I just think that with CGI, it's one of those where, like with Pacific Rim, had incredible scaling, but it still was fun. They were throwing them around, and like the action was crazy. So I think that like I was sort of hoping for something more like that with Godzilla versus Kong, where we could still kind of understand what's happening, because that's just my way of like understanding the bearings of everything when it's CGI, because it's just a better way to make the effects look good. Like I think it is intertwined with the general quality of the effects, and that's to me why that specific angle of the movie just did not work for me.
I can see that, but human story doesn't matter in this. We've established
horrible.
That.
Yeah,
we don't even remember half of what's going on. There was like the kid from like what was it?
Deadpool 2.
Yeah. And I don't know. There was just a lot of weird stuff. But they like captured Kong. All of a sudden, they didn't really explain that. So it doesn't matter. We're there for...
It's a setup for him to fight Godzilla on the water. Like it's just, that's what it is.
Exactly. And I loved that they did it where like each one had a bout. They won where like Godzilla won the water battle, and then Kong won the land battle to a certain degree. And then there was the final fight where Godzilla was the definitive, which was good because if Kong won, that would have been stupid in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then they did it where they teamed up, which having him fight Mechagodzilla alongside Godzilla was like
so cool.
As a little kid playing with his Godzilla toys, this is exactly what I wanted.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. It's such a great scene. I love too that it's like they have to work together. It wasn't like just like some like, oh, they're going to, and then they both just like destroy Mechagodzilla, you know, and like it wasn't even fair. Like they legitimately needed to team up because this one would have killed either one, you know, if it was just a one-on-one type of thing. And I just adore that. I think that's so fun.
And at this point in the MonsterVerse, it's so funny to see like how much destruction actually gets done, because in like some of the older movies, it's like, okay, yeah, sure, like they rebuild or whatever. This one, like Mechagodzilla, in like 2 seconds just goes wham and like
wipes
destroys
out half the city.
Yeah, exactly. That one was so funny. But once Godzilla showed up against King Kong and that hovercraft or the boat craft scene happened, it was awesome. Like that, it was game on once that happened.
Yeah. It holds up pretty well, I think. I still think that the human drama carries it down to me. Like if I was gonna like tier list them, which I've done on the channel twice now, but like, you know, it'd be like a C tier for me. Like it's fun. I love a lot of it. It's just those. To me, it's just those human characters, and you just kind of spend a while just kind of being like, all right, when's the next, you know, big fight? Because when the fights happen, it's worth it. But it's also like, man, I just want to see it, you know, like just show it to me. Come on.
Yeah, like the Godzilla and Kong scenes are so high, and then just once you get to the human portions, it drops in quality. Like it's almost like a Netflix B movie. It's just kind of like, okay, we're here doing our lines, you know.
Yeah.
But seeing Kong, and they did a lot of stuff like a lot of fans were asking if they were going to do the tree scene where Kong shoves like a tree in Godzilla's mouth, and they do it. They do it with his axe. What did you think about the axe?
I think it's cool. I have a figure somewhere, I don't know where he's holding the axe, but yeah. Oh, I think he's right, kind of back there. I think he's right there. So, but yeah. So I think it's an awesome addition. I think if it was just like a normal axe, it'd be kind of stupid. But because it's Godzilla's like spine or like a species or whatever, you know. But because it's like such an extra detail that works so well. It also makes the fight more interesting because it gives Kong sort of like that edge. Like Godzilla's edge is the atomic breath, you know. So for Kong to have something on that level that isn't electricity, I think it's really cool. So. You know,
I forgot about the electricity powers.
So,
and he's like biting the.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. Just comes out of nowhere in the movie too. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and they're like, "Wait a minute, Kong has electric powers."
That's the story now. That's it.
And then when he's like, because didn't he like halfway like die or something like that? And then all of a sudden it's like a bright day, and then it starts to cloud. And he's like. Electricity or lightning, Kong's special power or something like that.
It's so good. I love it.
I know. I think that this has one of my favorite Godzilla moments of all time when Godzilla charges up his breath and spews it at Kong and gets him, and Godzilla has like a grin on his face. Like he laughs at Kong. It's one of my favorite moments, but I'm like, that was kind of unexpected.
Yeah, I'm generally someone that doesn't like when kaijus act like humans, but it's little things like that I do like, because that's just it's sort of like towing that line, but it's like, you know what, like you're still in bounds, like you're fine, because it makes it fun. But it's just with that, it's like I like, because they lean into that a lot more too, you know, with Godzilla X Kong. But even in Godzilla versus Kong, like Mechagodzilla has like that laugh, where it's like that ka-jing, 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 like it's such a fantastic sound. It's so cool. I love the sound design with Mechagodzilla as well. It's wonderful.
Yeah, his sound, even though we don't like the design as we've established, his sound effects when he charges up his beam, or when his missile rockets go out, or when all of a sudden he goes and then like a missile shoots out of his shoulder, that was really cool. Yeah.
I think I don't like the red. There's just something about like the red that I'm not a huge fan of. I get you got to make it look evil, but I think that the idea is cool. you know, like for like the general, like the silhouette is neat, but it's just like I wish that it wasn't so overly complex. I don't know.
I think it looks too simple, in my opinion.
Okay.
As in terms of just like, though it's too square in my opinion. Like its face too is too square. It looks way too much like the 2014 Godzilla. I think Ready Player One was like the best Mecha Godzilla design that they could have shoved in this movie. If they wanted to do a little bit more, it should have looked a little bit more like the classic Showa Mecha Godzilla, in my opinion. Just a little bit more mechanical, a lot less wires running down all over the place, and more so like that flat-plated metal all over him, like it's armor. Like I think that would have made it look a lot better.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, Godzilla versus Kong.
Solid movie. Godzilla X Kong, I guess. It's a movie where when I saw it in theaters, I'm like, it's fun. You know, like it was okay, but I was like not like crazy, you know, head over heels. And then, you know, the controversy happened where, you know, that
weird.
Yeah, but then as it's one of those little where like the more I watch this movie, the more I start to hate it even more. I mean, hate's a very strong word, but you know, like it's just one of those where like every time I'm like I pick up on something and I'm just like, oh, like I don't want to, you know, like because like I keep watching it for a reason because there are elements that I do like, but I don't know. It's just like, for example, I just think that like the evolved Godzilla look I'm not a huge fan of. I hate like that like sunken in stomach, you know, that they gave him, and like the weird like giant spines on like the elbows, and
I wasn't a fan of those spines, and then I don't like that his tail looks like a Spinosaurus tail.
Yeah, like Stegosaurus, yeah, where it's got like the thing, yeah, and it goes like the paleo nerds are gonna rip you apart. You gotta be careful, man. They're nuts. They're like the mafia, dude.
You said the wrong dinosaur name.
Exactly, yeah. I've gotten DMs that were crazy because I said Allosaurus instead of T-Rex one time. It's like, it's fine.
Yeah, so this was an interesting movie for me because I had seen -1 at this point 2 times. When the first trailer had come out for it, because this trailer took quite a long time to come out too. It was like 5 months, and then the trailer was out. It was like the day that Godzilla -1 came out, because that was I just got home from the second viewing, and I thought it looked horrible. I was one of those people that was like, okay, like you had just come out of this magnificent experience of -1, and I think -1 is one of the best movies that have come out in the last 20 years. Like,
easily.
There's nothing that has touched it in the last 10 at least. And to come from an IMAX screening of that, and then a $15 million budget on top of that, and such an interesting human story, to then see the trailer for this, it was deflating to say the least. Like, I was kind of embarrassed about it.
Yeah, it was funny for me. So I do music video shoots as like I direct music videos as like kind of like a side job thing, and so I was doing a shoot, and my phone was just blowing up, and it was like literally it was all my friends. I had family that were like, you know, telling me that the trailer was out and everything, and they were giving me their thoughts and asking for my thoughts. But with iPhones, you know, it just says like the name, and so at first, like, you know, they were kind of seeing it, you know, like the people I was working with, and they're like, did someone die in your family? Like, why is everyone like, I'm like, do you need to like take this? I'm like, I don't know. And so I called my brother, and he's like, no, the trailer for the new Godzilla movie. I'm like, okay, boom, hung up, because I'm like, I'm working right now. Like, thank God it's nothing bad, but like, you know, and then I watched it, you know, later that night, and I was like, yeah, you know, like it was just this like feeling of like, I mean, I'm gonna see it, but like, you know.
Yeah, that was the exact same thing. I wasn't like other people were like the minute they saw Godzilla running, they're like, that's not Godzilla.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, that's like he's running.
That just shows, that's like the litmus test, I think, for, not to sound like a gatekeeper, but it's like, that's like the litmus test for like being a true fan. It's like, if you're cool with that, you're legit. Like, you know your Godzilla stuff, because he's done that before. He's literally like,
he ran in King of the Monsters. Like, what do you, like when he was fat? It's like, what do you... What are you talking about? He's never ran before.
Yeah, I think the marketing was interesting. How it started, like the first teaser was like it just showed Scar King on the throne with like the Kong skull and the Godzilla skull, and that was, and I'm like, that's interesting. And I was hoping it would be like a giant orangutan. I didn't like that they made it just like an elongated Kong that was red.
Yeah.
I wish that it was more interesting. But I don't know. My thought was when they first introduced Hollow Earth and Godzilla versus Kong was, oh, we're getting Megalon. Like, if they're going to embrace this craziness...
Yeah, and then get, like the Atlanteans or whatever. Like, have it, like,
yeah.
Megalon!
I thought that's what they were going to do. And I'm like, that'd be awesome. But then when I heard that they weren't, because normally they like kind of like announce, like they've purchased the rights to this character,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, we're probably not going to get that. But
haven't they got the rights to like a good majority of characters though?
No, because Toho is crazy with it. They only have it's a per movie basis, and they have to pay the license. That's part of the reason.
So that's why
King of the
Rodan
Monsters...
hasn't shown up lately.
Yeah, Rodan died on his way back to his home planet, and they just
he fell in a volcano again.
Exactly, yeah, he's locked up in there again. And Mothra, there was I don't know if you know much about this, but there was a controversy with the test screenings with Godzilla X Kong.
I saw there was like some weird other monster, and there was
Yeah, it was Phosphora, and then fans were pissed, so then they threw in Mothra, and they insist that Mothra was always in the plans, but it's like, it seems like a really quick pivot. I mean, if you made it to the test screenings, normally that's close
I
to
like
the finished
Mothra
product.
in the movie, so it's not really that big of a complaint from me.
No, yeah. I don't mind it. I'm just saying it's interesting that it was kind of like a big deal. Like, people were really upset about it, and it's like, okay.
Stupid controversy that nobody really cares about at the end of the day.
Right. This movie is surrounded by stupid controversies, let's be honest. Like, none of it mattered in the end. It really...
Yeah, and this is when I discovered you a little bit, because that's when that video came out where it's like, this guy's opinion on how Godzilla only works in Japan, or what was it called? It was like Godzilla doesn't work in America?
Godzilla doesn't work in America, yeah. Because I think the top comment is, of course he doesn't work in America. He doesn't have a visa. That was like the top comment. It made me laugh, but yeah.
And that's when like a ton of videos were coming out of this. It was like they saw -1 and they were like, oh, Godzilla, this is like the best movie of the year. Godzilla does not work at all in America. Or Godzilla doesn't work at all in a goofy matter. And it's like...
Which really part of me, like, and I think I even say this in the video, that it's like, I understand on the surface where you're coming from, because it would kind of be like if like Joker from 2019 came out, and like the next year it was like the Batman the movie from 1966, but like that came out like in 2020. It would be like, what are we, like, Batman only works if X, but it's like, that I understand if you don't understand much about the franchise, which this person obviously didn't, but it is funny though that like because I do still think that a lot of the stuff I say stands when it comes to Godzilla X Kong. Like, I think it is still a very fun movie, but I just think that at the end of the day I just get this like, I'm watching slop. Like, if this didn't have Godzilla in it and didn't have Kong in it, I don't think I'd be revisiting this much. Like, if it was like some two random monsters, it's like, this is not that good of a movie, but it's because these two monsters are in it that I'm kind of like revisiting it as much as I am. Almost like as like a sign of like, it's like one of those like bargaining, like the signs of like, like that's where I'm at right now. I'm like, there's got to be something good in here, like I'm just trying to like rewatch it more. But
I liked that we came from -1, and then Godzilla X Kong was such a left field from that, it wasn't even funny. And I like that Godzilla is popular more than ever. Like, it's so amazing to see how after 70 years, this is when the franchise has finally hit its peak. Like, it's amazing to see.
70 years in, like it hits its peak. Like, that's
where it's the highest grossing Japanese Godzilla movie, and then you have the highest American Godzilla movie of all time. Just amazing to see that. I unironically really like Godzilla X Kong.
See, that's where we differ.
Yeah.
King of the Monsters,
And it's like I said, I can see the monster action, so I'm all for it.
Right.
That's the main reason I'm there. Obviously, I'm with you where it's like the human stuff is such slop at this point. Like on rewatches, I'm just kind of rolling my eyes. It felt like ChatGPT wrote it.
It's like
when the guy who's the one like wacko guy who's
Bernie.
When he's in the Hollow Earth and they're like doing the whole gravitational thing, and he's like, oh my gosh, they're using the jellies that do it, and it's gonna pull the gravity this way and then this way, and he's like explaining it, and he's like, is that kind of right? And she just kind of like nods, and I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, I just I hate drawing comparisons, obviously, because they are such different movies. But then it's like I think about some of the dialogue in that movie, and then I think about like, is your war finally over?
Oh my God,
like,
dude.
and it's like
I had tears in my eyes watching that movie for the first time.
Yeah. But it's just one of those where it's like, like I really would just kill for a Godzilla movie that is like more in line with that. But not that validates Godzilla X Kong by any means. But you know what I mean? Like, it's hard because the one of, if not the best Godzilla movie, in years comes out, and then Godzilla X Kong is the next thing that you see. It's kind of like, I really wish we had more of what I just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that affected it. I think if it was like Godzilla -1 came out in like 2022, like a year prior, it would have been better because then they would have been more spaced out. Because they came out so close, you can't help but compare the two. You really can't.
Especially with the budgets and just how like the graphics in Godzilla X Kong. I'm sorry, I love the movie, and I'm even saying that the graphics are bad. And going and watching, because I watched -1 like 5 times, and then I saw the black and white cut in theaters as well. Superb. Like, just -1, it really did affect a lot of people's opinions on Godzilla X Kong, myself included, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to tune my brain off with the human moment. It's not going to be as good as this. I knew going into it, it wasn't going to be as good as -1.
Yeah. This might be a very not nice comparison, but it would be like if you went to McDonald's every day and all of a sudden they offered a steak, and it was like the best steak you've ever eaten in your entire life. And it's like, well, even though, like, let's say that's a terrible comparison now that I'm thinking about it, because the franchise has fantastic moments. I'm going to get ripped apart for that take.
Well, no, I think...
But you know what I mean? Like, it would be like
that's a good way to saying it.
You had a great burger. It was a great, phenomenal burger, and it was like, well, I mean, I've had great ones before, but, like, this is amazing, like...
It would be like if you had eaten great food your entire life. Sometimes it's not the best. And then all of a sudden you have your best meal that's ever been prepared in your entire
Better
life.
Comparison. Thank you. That's what.
And then you go back to like not following the recipe book, I guess, is a good way. Godzilla -1 quite literally is the best Godzilla movie ever made on a technical front, on a writing front, on a graphic front, on just everything kind of front. Obviously, I'm gonna have and I'm gonna wait to say like -1 is my personal favorite or like in my top 5, just because they tend to vary. I like I said, I like a lot of the goofier ones, and I like the Congo Godzilla ones where it's like Son of Godzilla. Even Godzilla's Revenge I have a really soft spot for. But you have really great ones like Destroyer, the original 54, even Return of Godzilla is really great. Even the Americanized version with Raymond Burr is really good.
I love that one. Yeah.
And Godzilla 2000, you have Godzilla Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Attack, that has a really great story too.
That's so good too. Yeah.
But -1 truly is like the best movie out of 50 years. It'd be like if all of a sudden the MCU had the greatest movie of all time come out.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden we're back to like I don't know, Black Widow. It came out right after it.
Yeah. Yeah. With -1, it's also really funny because I had friends that saw it, and then they know that I'm like a huge Godzilla nerd, and they said, okay, so I love -1. What are movies like that? And it's kind of like,
how do you even like go?
Shin Godzilla? It's like, I don't like GMK, because it's like, it's hard because it's like, well, congrats, you just watched the best one.
Yeah.
Like there's 54, which is a masterpiece in and of itself too, but it's like, I can understand why some people might not like that because it's black and white, it's subtitled, so I get that, why some people would be turned off from that. I love it, but, so it's hard to recommend it to some people because it's like, well, I mean, congrats, like, you peaked, like, you watched the best one. Like,
exactly. I don't know. It's very hard to recommend even where to start in the Godzilla franchise because everyone's different, everyone started different. Some people have started with Shin Godzilla. Some people have started with -1. Some have started with the MonsterVerse. Some have started with the older movies like you and me probably. Yeah. I would say if you haven't started with the old movies, it's very hard to recommend someone where to go. I guess like the best way I recommend people is the Heisei era, since that's like you can start from the Return of Godzilla, go to Destroyer. It's a consistent story. All of them are pretty high quality for the most part. And they got really great stories.
GMK. I say GMK because it kind of embodies the Showa. It has like the inklings of like what's to come with like CGI being utilized in the movies. The human story is fantastic. You get King Ghidorah, you get Mothra, and you get Baragon, who's more obscure. So you kind of, it's like if you like that, then you kind of go more into the Showa stuff. But you know, it's just, I feel like that's what I've always recommended to people is GMK, just because it's like one movie. It's like if you hate it, then you know it might not be for you because it's kind of like you know where it is. But if you like it being goofier, you know, like here's these movies that then you can kind of create, you know, go out and watch.
Exactly, and just to kind of bring it back to Godzilla X Kong,
Right.
growing up, I loved the goofier Godzilla. This is what I grew up with, was the goofier side of Godzilla. Like I said, love Son of Godzilla. I really like Godzilla's Revenge, actually, or All Monsters Attack, if that's what it's called in Japan.
I call Godzilla's Revenge. That's a better title, you know.
Well, some people are like, you didn't call it by the Japanese name. It's like,
oh, those people are the worst, man.
Yeah, or they're like, the Japanese version is the only version you should watch. It's like, go away.
The people that say like the movie House from 1977, they'll say Houseu. It's like, it's called House. Just say House. It's a great Toho movie if you haven't seen it, by the way.
I have it on my list of HBO Maxes to kind of go back from the Criterion Collection.
So nutty. If you want something crazy to watch, put that on. It's fantastic. But I've heard people say like it's called Houseu. It's like it's not. They say house in the movie. Like it's just. The Japanese stuff drives me nuts with people who do that because it's like you don't speak the language. Like, you know, knock it off.
Yeah, and then Final Wars. I know it's a movie that seems to be kind of having a resurgence, and I'm glad. But it's one that not a lot of people liked in the Godzilla sphere, surprisingly enough. And
I love it.
I
love it.
Love it to death. Thank you.
So
Captain Gordon is like the
Yeah.
greatest thing they've ever done in Godzilla lore.
I have a Captain Gordon story really quick, if you don't mind.
No way.
So Don Fry, he was at G-Fest, and so my buddy Jesse, he's been in a ton of my movies and stuff. Not really a huge Godzilla fan, but he just tagged along because he just likes experiencing like new things. And I'm like, well, G-Fest is just kind of fun just to people watch, you know, because it's wild. But we're walking around. Jesse's huge into MMA, like he's massive, like he just loves it. And we were walking, and he saw Don Fry in like one of like the conference, you know, because he was doing like a meet and greet thing, and he was like Jesse, like it was like starstruck. I've never seen this dude like this before. I'm like, do you want to go meet him? Like, I'll pay. Like, if you want an autograph, like I'll pay for your autograph, you know. And he's like, no. He's like, I don't want to disappoint him. It was like literally, it was like Donald Glover in Community, where he's like, you can't disappoint a picture. Like it was just like he was so starstruck by him. And to me, it's like, I don't know his MMA stuff. Like, I've seen his highlights. Like, the guy's nuts. Like, with him fighting, like, he's one of the best to ever do it.
He's pretty funny, too.
Oh, yeah, he's great. But he had some health problems recently, so he wasn't at this year's G-Fest. But apparently, he'll be here for the next one. So
I'm going to the next one.
Okay, cool. I've heard he's going to be here. So check the Facebook page, because they're always updating on, like, so-and-so's going to be there. So, yeah. I met Akira Takarada a couple years. It was
really,
yeah, and it was so funny because I had my head down because I was like just like walking, and it was at the old location, so it was a much smaller venue. And I always bring a backpack, and so I had all my figures that I just bought, and we were getting ready to leave. And I'm like, I had my head down, I almost bump into this guy, and I look up, and I was like maybe like 10 at the time, and it was him because he was like walking to go do like one of the things, and I like didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my god. And he we kind of like bowed, and then like he went that way, and I was just like, it was one of the wildest moments ever because I was so starstruck. Like I never felt that way ever, you know, but it was like, this dude's a living legend, you know. Awesome. Right here in front of me.
Well, maybe we can meet next time, because I'm going to go to my first one next year, because I've always wanted to go since I was a little kid. It's, you know, G-Fest, if you're not a Godzilla fan, then you don't have any idea what it is. But it's like the Comic-Con of Godzilla, basically. And so I've always wanted to go, and it was kind of one of those things where it's like super small, so it's like, I don't know, kind of going really cross-country to something this tiny is kind of a little, if it's not like in your backyard or kind of a state over. But this year really solidified it, like seeing all the reactions of the theater reactions. Like even Godzilla X Kong was like, everyone's cheering and applauding. It's like, oh man, I got to be there next year.
Yeah, I go every year because we're just a state over. So it's just a quick kind of fun drive with some friends. You know, we make a road trip out of it. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you there then.
Yeah, it was really fun last year too, because I did like a community post that like 4 people saw where I said I was going to be there. And so I met a couple people. It was really fun, but like at that point in my videos, I always had like kind of like long hair, and I had like a beard. And so I had cut my hair before and I shaved my beard so no one like recognized me. So like one guy was like kind of like, give me this. And I'm like, yeah. So I brought my Firewood Media hat and I ended up just kind of like wearing it around just so people kind of like had an idea of who I was. But it was just really funny because like I kind of got these like looks of like are you who I think I it was really funny. Stupid on my part, but
that's all right, man.
But yeah, I'm excited though for this year. I can't wait.
Very excited. Hopefully when they announce the movies, it's some good classic bangers. I would love I would love to see my favorite of all time, Biollante. That I would I would love to see that in the theater. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I don't know if you could see it behind me, but the Jiris statue that I have up there,
it's a little blurred, so I don't
Yeah. I wonder if I could unblur it. But I think I can. Nope, I made it worse. I don't know. But yeah, it's huge. It's like this tall. And
oh wow.
The best days to go are Sundays because of in the dealer's room area, because that's when everyone's trying to get rid of all their stuff. So you can like I got that for like $100, and that's normally like way more. So those just as like from one G-Fest enthusiast to another.
Okay.
Wait on spending. Like if you're gonna go to the dealer's room and pick some stuff up, wait until Sunday because that's when all the deals are.
Yeah, because like I've seen some videos and it's like people are spending like $1,000 and it's like, oh my god, it's like
Yeah, that was almost me last year. We were almost there. So
it depends on what you get, but like it's
right.
like okay, on like one figure, like one guy's like $150 and it's like this tiny. It's like
yeah. No, I was like. I'm pretty much set like with my collection. Like I have almost every figure. I needed an Orga, and I just got Orga. Thank God. But like, so
that's
I needed an
cool.
Orga. Yeah, I know. This was way too much. I don't want to say, but I'm not proud of it. But
there is one time when I was a kid, and I regret this more than anything. I was 10 years old. I was at a flea market, or like a farmer's market, whatever they want to do. This guy had every single figure in the early 2000s, and it was like rare figures now, like the King Kong Bandai figures.
Oh, that's the Holy Grail one, yeah.
2 for $20, dude.
Oh my god.
I grabbed a Godzilla 2000 figure, and then I grabbed a rare Megaguirus, like the theater giveaways.
Oh yeah, those are awesome, yeah.
I got that, and then that was it. But ever since then, I was like, I'm always kicking. I'm like, dude, for $100, I could have walked out with like every figure.
I have dreams about that type of stuff, man. Like literally, I'll wake up and I'll go, damn it. Just like it's so. But I just bought the Dream Box set that they have, where it's Gabara.
I saw that, but for it's like $400, right?
It was $160, which is still too much. But I'm like, yeah. And
how big are the figures?
They're 6-inch.
Okay.
So
because I want to get the Kamacuras one.
They're gonna sell them independently later that year, so I would recommend waiting. I wanted the box because it looks so cool, and like the illustrations by Matt Frank, and so I'm like, I want that.
Did you see the 42,000 or what is it called? It's like a human-sized -1.
I did, dude. If I win the lottery, you wouldn't know, but there'd be signs like that would be out in my yard.
Yeah, it was like it's decent price for like a human-sized one and like the detail on it, but it's like, dude, you need to take out a loan for that sucker. And there's only going to be like 3 of them produced or something insane.
Yeah, that's lame. Yeah, the Jiris one, they made 3,000 of them, and on mine there's like a little thing where it says like number 96 out of 3,000. So
that's so
that's
cool.
pretty fun. But
there's a couple good figures I got. Back in the early 2000s, I have a lot of my childhood figures. I never got rid of any of them.
Yeah, those are all kind of up there. You might see King Ghidorah.
I had the Pack of Destruction, the little like.
Oh, I always wanted that.
I lost the majority of the figures, but I still have Manda, Gigan, the 2 Destroyers, and then Mothra. So I still have like some of them, but like I lost because I've moved a few times. But I got a Manda figure, which is kind of rare, and then. Most recently, because now that like there's actually like some good deals, because before Godzilla figures were always just so expensive, and nowadays you can find them for like 20, 35 bucks, whatever.
Yeah.
Got a the Godzillasaurus -1 figure. Got that one. Got a baby Godzilla or little Godzilla, the Chibi figure.
Yep. Yeah. From Godzilla. Yeah.
Yeah, because they've never done little Godzilla before. I'm like,
Yep.
And then I've just kind of like sporadically collected. I got like a burning Godzilla from the early 2000s and stuff. So
yeah.
I got a smaller collection compared to you, but
no, I'm bad. I'm a hoarder at this point. Like it's really bad. This shelf is just all just like they're all thrown all over the place. It's really bad. I need to like organize.
I've got a lot of Godzilla VHS tapes. I just opened up some sealed ones the other day, but
that's sick.
Yeah, but
so, I my golden goose, like the one that I always, the one that I always wanted, I should say, the white whale, the one that got away, was Titanosaurus, and so
I've always wanted a Titanosaurus figure.
So I got one recently because they did the reissue of the 2002 figure from like that box set.
Saw that.
Yeah. And I always wanted that one, so I'm like, all right. And I bought it from a scalper for way too much. I could have just bought the original one at that point. But when I got it and I opened it up and it said 2002 on the actual foot, they literally just redid the entire mold and everything, and they repainted it. It's so detailed. I'm like, okay, I'm actually kind of happy I paid what I paid. Cause
I'm considering pre-ordering that Haya Godzilla 2000, or Hyman?
Haya? I think it's Haya.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's like an excellently painted guy. And it's like $60 or something like that compared to the Monster Arts figures.
I'm not big into like those. Like, I mean, I've never purchased a Haya, so I couldn't tell you. I have a Monster X that's SH Monster Arts, and it's so flimsy. Like, I feel like
never been a fan of Monster Arts.
Yeah, I don't know. I prefer Bandai's. Like, my buddy Joe makes fun of me for having like he says they look like baby toys, but it's
but they're solid.
Yeah, they're solid. Like, I feel like I can drop it and it won't shatter into a million pieces.
They're meant to be played with. They're meant to be stored. So it's like, yeah, sure, the detail's not 100%, but it's like...
Oh, trust me, there's like, my Ebra figure is atrocious. This looks like a bath toy. Like, it's really bad.
I love it. Is that an original or is that Final Wars?
This, I think it's Final Wars. I think. Because it's got kind of like the one as like the hook. So maybe... No, wait, no, this is 66. Yeah, this was because I got this at G-Fest, and I think this is the 66 one because it looks like it. I can't really tell. I know I have the tag somewhere, and I feel like the tag has the 66 poster on it, but yeah.
I know.
Wars,
I know when I'm going to G-Fest, I'm gonna. I'm looking. What the heck is that?
Manda.
That is not Manda. That looks like the dragon from like. That looks.
You can't move anything except for the head.
What the heck? So. That is not Manda. This is Manda. Really... I'll show you Amanda.
I'd like to see it.
This is Amanda.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that.
He's a bit more cartoony, but
I love like the like he looks like a mustache. Like that's one of my favorite aspects of his design. I just adore that.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that this is like based off the Showa. Like Destroy All Monsters, probably.
Yeah, almost like Atragon, maybe. But yeah, that's cool though. Was that in the Pack of Destruction?
Yeah. So these are how small.
These are how
small they are. Just really tiny. So I mean, like, I've moved like 5 or 6 times over the last couple years. So like, you lose them and stuff. Gigan is missing his bandsaw on his stomach because it popped out. But I still have him.
Yeah.
This is the oldest Godzilla figure I have.
Oh man.
It is like 25 years old almost, but this was like at a Dave & Buster's and my dad won it from me when I was like a kid.
That's awesome. I've got a giant one. I don't know if it's like Imperial, whatever. It's like huge. It's like this tall, and I got it at a Rainforest Cafe when I was like a kid. I don't know why they had it there, but it doesn't have any spine, so it's kind of like one of those like bootleg ones.
Oh.
But it says like 96 on it. I don't know. But I haven't really done much research on it. That one's upstairs, up in the attic. But yeah, this
one says
bootleg ones.
Imperial?
Oh yeah, Imperial is official, but they're like not. Like they didn't have the high standards.
I mean, it kind of looks like a Terror of Mechagodzilla almost, I guess.
Yeah, Imperial are official, but like they're great though. I've always wanted one because the big one that I have is a knockoff of the Imperial, but.
One of my friends, who he's in his 60s, but he's got one of them because I went in his man cave and he's got the big version of this basically.
Yeah.
And it looks sick. I was like, "You're a Godzilla fan?" He's like, "Yeah, you didn't know that?" I was like,
"Yeah, I have too many right now. Like I'm sure there's there's tons here. Like I have them on my amps. Like, it's just, there's so many at this point. It's like an infestation.
You can
like,
never have enough Godzilla figures. I'm just saying that right now.
True. Yeah. Yeah. As soon as I have more space, like, trust me, I'm going to have a giant shelf with all of them. But right now, they're all just kind of sitting on my DVDs and taking up way too much space.
I know. Mine are starting to, like, crowd over my section because that Godzilla X Kong, the one that, like, breathes mist, that was, like, the coolest thing ever.
Yep.
And so, like, it takes over my shelving units now, and I'm like, gotta get more shelves.
My girlfriend got me that for, I think it was like it was for Christmas. It was a late Christmas present, and she like walks out of her house with this giant box, and I'm just like, I wonder what this could. And I had no clue because it was like wrapped, you know. And I'm like, I thought at first it was gonna be one of those things where like it's like a smaller box, and then it turns into like a gift card, you know, because those are always fun. But no, and that's what it was, and I just freaked out. So I played with that for like a good like week, just like having it like march around. My German Shepherd hated it, but.
It was so cool
so
though,
fun.
like when you did it was like,
yeah, boom, 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 and then it shoots it out. It's fantastic. I love it.
So, Godzilla X Kong.
we've talked about everything but Godzilla X Kong.
Oh man, I like it. It's got a lot of monster fights.
Scar King is kind of okay.
Yeah, I like the ice.
He'd be
dragon.
better as a Starscream, you know, as like a. Like if Shima was like the actual main big bad and Scar King was like a Starscream, you know, I don't know, but
I think they should turn Kong more into Mechani Kong as the series goes on.
It's the cyborg, yeah.
Yeah,
they were gonna do that in the '90s.
Oh.
They were gonna do it a Heisei Godzilla versus Kong remake, and it would have been he would have been messed up by Godzilla's atomic breath, so they would have had like a scientist lady turn him into a cyborg with like.
I think I remember reading those. Yeah.
Yeah. So. It would have been wild.
The baby Kong gets harassed. One of the best scenes in cinematic history.
As nunchucks, yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I was laughing so hard in the theater with that.
Too.
I was like crying, and like people were like looking around at us like we were insane people. It was really funny.
Yeah, our theater was really boring too, and me and my buddy were like we were dying hysterically at it and having a blast.
Yeah. My buddy's girlfriend was like, when he showed up, was like, "Aw," you know, like when she saw what Baby Kong looked like, and then as soon as it started getting whipped around, I was like crying, laughing, and she was so mad.
Or when the thing turns into a little stinker and starts like trying to kill Kong, like putting him in the lake, and he's like looking at him.
Yeah. That was great. I have an art book of that movie because my parents got it for me, and it's so awesome. Though seeing all the illustrations and like seeing. You know, Shimo, like the ice dragon or whatever, like seeing like the early versions and how there's one where it has like a massive like underbite, like it looks so wild. It was, the art direction was crazy though for that movie. That is one of my favorite aspects of it. Like Hollow Earth looks crazy. Like I love how out there it looks. Like when they're walking through like that like crystal temple, I'm like, oh, this is just straight out of a Showa movie. Like it's, you know, and they're like talking about, you know, oh, this crystal does this, you know, like that was.
Very much Showa, yeah.
And I liked that a lot. That I liked, but everything else, it was just kind of like...
The only thing I wish they would have done, and it would have made the movie amazing in my eyes, was, you know how, like, Jira goes up the steps and is, like, they're making it out like she's, like, the key to everything? And you know how there's, like, this lady, like, the head mother or whatever, she comes out of the shadows? I thought they were going to do it where she's a Mothra fairy. Where, like, that's her twin.
I'm like... Yeah, where's the next one? You know, like we're two. I wish they just would have had two come out. You know,
and then like they started singing Mothra, and it's like this is, and then it would have connected like Skull Island to Mothra, and like this is like Mothra's. I would have been like, okay, and then like they're twins and stuff, and then they start singing the Mothra. So I was like, that would have made it amazing in my eyes.
Yeah, it's like at times that's part of my issue with the movie too. Is it's like they're simultaneously embracing the Showa era while scared to embrace it at the same time. Like, it felt like they wouldn't do something like that because it's not Hollywood enough. But they'll have him, like, fight in zero-G and run, you know, and like, do all these crazy moves. And it's like, I love that. But it's like, if you're going to do that, embrace it and go all the way.
Yeah.
That's my kind of, like, problem with it, you know.
I do like, though, that we're getting, like, we can have the serious Godzilla going on at the same time as the goofy Godzilla. It's like,
It's the meme where it's like, 2 cakes, you know, like, great, I get to have 2 cakes, like, it's wonderful.
I think my favorite moment in the movie, though, is when they have the Thor entrance in Wakanda, almost. And I was dying laughing, because you have the whole fight with Kong and Godzilla, and I love that they did, like, a Godzilla versus Kong kind of thing where it's like, no, I'm still like the bad dude around here, Kong.
Yeah.
Like he stomps on him until Mothra comes and does her little like pixie dust or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they have it where like chaos is about to break out and the villains are about to do it, and then you just hear like whoom whoom whoom, and you hear the roar, and then it like they come down in like a spiral of light into the ground, and then they come out and they start running.
Yeah, it's great. It has great movie moments. It really does.
Yeah.
Like, that's when I'm negative towards it. It's like I always say this because people think that I'm too hard on some of these movies. It's like there's like normal movies, and then there's like the Godzilla movies are up here for me. You know, like if I say I hate a Godzilla movie, in actuality, it's like I still like it a lot. But in terms of the other movies, it's not as good. Like that's more of like my standards.
Like the worst Godzilla movie is still a good movie at the end of the day. Like even TriStar's Godzilla, for as much crap as that, it's still a good movie. I was watching it the other day for a video, and the first 40 minutes are actually really good.
I said that in my retrospective. I'm like, it has one of the best first acts in any movie ever. It builds up so well, like where you don't know what he looks like.
And I'm wondering if Gareth Edwards watched that movie and because it's very similar. In ways, like you don't see Godzilla fully until he comes out.
The titles are almost identical, where it's like old footage of like nuclear test stuff as like the theme plays, and that's something I didn't talk about. Godzilla 2014 has a great title sequence.
Yeah,
with like the redacted, where like it lines over certain things. So wild.
I like the intro in 2014 too, when they're going through like the bones. I was really confused though when I first saw that, because I thought that was like an old Godzilla that they were saying. It is. It's a relative called Dagon. I think that's my understanding of it, because it even is confusing now. But they made a whole comic about like it, kind of explaining it. Never watched or read the books or the comics of the.
It's called Dagon. It's like a distant relative of Godzilla. So it is, but it isn't. So there's some great deleted scenes with that, by the way. It came out recently where it was removed because otherwise the movie would have been like rated R. Where it was like a miner whose head was like caved in, and it was like his like jaw was like this way, and it was from that mining accident, and it went more into like what the miners were dealing with, because that's what caused it. It was like a horror movie. Like it was genuinely kind of terrifying when you look at some of the footage. But
I did see the deleted scene that finally came out of the famous
the Akira Takarada one.
Akira Takarada, and it was a scene that just should have been in the movie.
It's 10 seconds.
It like should have been in the movie.
Yeah.
No one, I get it that like no one would have got it unless you're a hardcore Godzilla fan, but it's like it's one of those things where it's just like, this is 10 seconds, dude. You could have had it.
Yeah. No one's gonna go, that one scene where he meets with the immigration officer for 10 seconds kind of went, let's get rid of that. It was so bizarre to me, but yeah.
All right. So are we in agreement that Pacific Rim Uprising is the best movie of all time?
I've never heard of that movie before. What is that? Is that like a comic book or something? I don't know what Pacific Rim Uprising is.
Yeah, that's very true.
Is that like a fan film or something?